Justin. Oh,
Well,
there we go.
it's dumb.
Just do it again. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're in.
This is welcome to Mr. Podcast with Claude
and Justin.
Okay, that's what it is. And
oh, sorry, that wasn't the real thing. That was the rehearsal.
That was the rehearsal,
or was it real? Sorry, I can't tell the difference
rehearsal?
anymore.
Are we rehearsing? This is my normal voice.
Well, this is for real. This is going on the podcast. Okay, yeah, no, we can start. Okay, you ready? I'll count down.
Yes.
Okay.
Do it.
5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome to Mr. Podcast with Claude
and Justin.
And our special guest, Jenny.
Me.
Welcome, special guest, Jenny.
Hello. Welcome to my presence. All of you.
Your presence is a gift to us.
Oh, my presence is present enough.
Oh,
we're here talking about everybody's favorite cinematic universe.
Marvel.
That's a joke because everyone disagrees about that. But yeah. So the long and short of it is
McHugh.
What was that?
McHugh, right?
McHugh.
They call it McHugh.
That's what all the hardcore fans call it, McHugh. Justin and Jenny have just started getting their feet wet in McHugh.
That's right. So you're in for a real treat, Claude, because we know almost nothing.
That's what's great, and that's why this will be a fun podcast because I know almost everything.
Yeah. This is definitely like one of those like the one person knows the stuff and the other person's never seen it before, and
everybody's favorite podcast format. Yeah,
we're doing that gimmick. Yeah, not intentionally, but that's just kind of how it is. So
it's convenient for our purposes.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff was not particularly of interest to me, so I just kind of ignored it for the last, I don't know, how long's it been going? The first Iron Man was like 2008 or something. So yeah, like I don't know how many years is that, like 13 or something. Yeah, I've just been hiding under a rock. I have technically seen a couple of them over the years, including that one, but not many. And I definitely didn't know like anything about the larger stories that I feel like the Avengers sort of brings them together. Mainly it was because you suggested watching WandaVision, and that like to understand the context for that show that that we should watch the Avengers movies. And I mean that was true.
Yes, and also I sort of feel like we should have watched like 17 other movies as well.
You were right about that.
Well, there's some diminishing returns as it's related to WandaVision particularly. There's diminishing returns in some of the other movies you haven't seen in terms of how much that would have helped. But so basically you guys watched the 4 Avengers movies and WandaVision, and then just recently, and then over the years as the movies were coming out, you caught a couple sort of here and there.
Yeah.
I just want to state for the record, I don't have anything against comic books or comic book movies. I don't have any
but
no. Just to say, I did not grow up with them, and so I don't have. So it just never struck me as something like, oh, go see this. When the first Iron Man movie came out, people told me it was so good. Go, you gotta go see it. And I remember that I found it entertaining. I was a little off put by the arrogant male character. I felt like I didn't really speak to me. So without getting ahead of myself, I was pretty pleased with the arc of Tony Stark. The Tony Stark.
Tony
arc.
Stark with a C at the end.
Yeah, there you go.
It doesn't work that well when you say it, but on paper it's great.
Right, it's great. And we did see Black Panther like the rest of America, and enjoyed it when it came out.
The movie, the Marvel movie, It.
And we saw the Marvel movie,
Pennywise.
Marvel movie, It.
Pennywise is on Thanos' army.
Yeah, that's No, I have to reject that. Well, we'll talk about Thanos later. We'll get there.
Oh, please. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I've been waiting years for you guys to say that to me.
Oh man. Yeah.
No, I'm super excited. I've been such a fan of this whole saga for a really long time. I think Marvel is the ultimate modern storyteller, just in terms of consistency across different writers and directors and producers and stuff. There's only a couple that I think even kind of are bad in some sort of objective way, and the rest I think are sort of good in that kind of, does it pass a good movie, bar, and before it gets into like just being completely subjective, like you're saying about like, are you interested in comic book, stories adapted from comics and stuff like that. But yeah, the Avengers movies in particular are even more, this sort of team up idea of, what Marvel did of having these, origin story independent solo films, and then having the characters introduced that way, and then teaming them up in their own super franchise, which had never been done before, was really just mind blowing. So I remember when the first Avengers came out, and it was really incredible. It actually made me like the characters I hadn't liked already, like Captain America. I wasn't that interested in him at all by the time Avengers came out. I thought his first movie I did not like. But it was it's that thing of like, like when you watch Star Trek shows, right? Where there's a certain point where you start to just like the characters. They just finally wear you down or whatever, or they finally do something that you're like, oh, okay, now I get you. So like now I'm all about Captain America. Like I think he's one of the best, portrayed characters in the whole thing. But so I guess and then you guys, so there's a lot to talk about. I know we don't have a ton of time, so we'll have to be brief in sort of the thing. But I guess maybe like, what are your, like, either a rating or a general overview of like each movie, and then I guess maybe we can then talk about then we'll talk about WandaVision after, I guess, maybe.
Sure, that sounds great. But first, I'm curious, why did you not like the first Captain America movie? We have not seen it, so no spoilers. But why did you not like it?
No spoilers, but tell me why you didn't like it.
Right.
Well,
did your opinion of it change to any extent when you started liking the character later from the Avengers movies?
Yeah. So the character that Captain America is, it's that thing that we've seen in other movies before, where Captain America, the first Avenger, this is the name of his first movie, is an origin story. How this guy goes from a normal person to a super soldier, basically, right? And while there was a lot of good moments in the movie that I liked on the action front, the story itself wasn't really about the character that he ends up being, by the time he's in the Avengers, for sure, which is really, really interesting, because he's sort of fully realized Captain America, right? So I think that's part of it. Is the first movie, he's just not. It's the transformation story, and so some of that wasn't that interesting to me. I do think it is really well done, and like when I go back and watch it again, I have a different appreciation for the story that they're telling. But yeah, at the time, I just wasn't really wowed with the story. I didn't find it that interesting, and it's like where they leave off with the character is not as impressive where we find the character in the later stuff, which is who he is for most of the cinematic movies. So I think that was the big thing. Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, is one of my top 5 Marvel movies, because now he's the character I want to see in that sequel, and he's operating on a new level and having bigger challenges, and just the style of that movie. It basically is like one of the magic things that Marvel has done is all of their comic book movies are in some sort of genre non-comic book people can identify with. So like Captain America, the first Avenger, is basically like a war film. The second movie is like a 70s spy thriller, I think, is the biggest sort of touchstone of that movie. So the action is really grounded. close quarters, just like if I implant that idea in your head, like a 70s spy thriller, and then you watch it, I think you pick up and go, oh, okay, I see like what's happening here. So I think, and so like Ant-Man, like that, those are generally heist movies, so all of the movies have this other major genre that is built into the structure that makes it really easy for people to latch onto. And I think that's why they succeed more often than the DC stuff, which I think mostly just stay as like disjointed comic book movies, Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just curious because I think there's it took me a while to kind of warm up in the first Avengers movie. There's a lot of foundational work with that. And part of that was just me learning who the characters were, but part of it was the filmmakers telling new viewers. It sort of reminded me of when you watch a movie that's based on a TV show and you're a big fan of the TV show. You may not be like, you think about like the X-Files movies and some others where it's like yes right, exactly, or like Star Trek movies where if assuming that you're a fan and the story, you want to go deeper into the mythology that you already know, but they're also like writing it for people who are not mega fans.
Exactly.
So I think that was one of the things going on in the first movie. But it took me a while to care about Captain America. But clearly, like over the course of the 4 movies that we watched, he does become like a very interesting character. So yeah, but Justin, what do you think? So Claude asked, what did you ask? Like,
what's your general rating of the first Avengers movie? If you number out of 5 or 10 or however you want to score it or whatever, it's kind of curious.
The first one, just the first one.
Yeah, we're just talking about the first one right now, I guess.
Out of 5? Is that what you're
5? Just say what it's out of. Just tell us what it's out of.
No, I'm just trying to figure out how I want to.
You can do Ebert style 4-star reviews if that's better. If you want to use that metric, so we can compare it against other movies he's rated.
Yeah. No. Actually, so I've been listening to some Lost Lowdown, and the thing we used to do was, it's this great podcast that you should all listen to. If you're hearing this, there's no doubt you know what that is. Anyway, we used to do letter grades for the episodes. So let me do
avant-garde of us.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the mood for letter grades.
I like
a theta. You gonna give it a theta?
I think
which alphabet? Letters from which alphabet?
I actually like that idea, but no. I think I would give it. I did enjoy it. It was entertaining. It was fun. There's one thing I really loved from the movie. If we talk about him in detail, I'll have to mention that. But I think overall, I would probably give it something like a B-.
Okay.
Ish, something like that. B-, C+. It depends on the part of the movie. There were parts I enjoyed more than others. Sure, I think, it was a bit of a shocker jumping in, not really knowing the characters. I think probably, like you said about the first Captain America movie, I think, I had this experience with Deep Space Nine where, like, when I first started watching it, I think you even referenced Star Trek earlier, like, I didn't really care about the characters, or I wasn't into it. And so, like, I just didn't really appreciate it that much early on. But when I went back and rewatched like the pilot and stuff, I was like, wow, these characters are great. Like I got it, So anyway, it's possible because it was the first one, it was a transition for me to get used to the character. And if I went back now, I might like it more. But I think the Loki scepter, like that stuff was fine. And then there's just these like aliens that come and attack, and I don't know, it was just a bit it was just a little I don't know, generic. I felt like the plots are more interesting in the movies after the first one, and I also think the characters are more interesting in the movies after the first one. So basically I feel like it was a solid start, but it was just very just solid, but not spectacular. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. B
And of
minus, to
course,
leave room, you know?
yeah, and that makes sense because, like, you know, my impression of that movie when I saw it before the other ones existed was like, holy crap, this is the best thing ever. But so comparing them to having seen all of them in short succession will definitely make them feel the relative ranking is important there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched all of this within a week. So I
Yeah.
forget if you already mentioned that, but
Yeah, it was a pretty short amount of time. And obviously that's not how they were released. So I'm sure it was a different experience if you watched it and then waited for 3 years or whatever for the next one.
You guys basically watch like a short TV show starring the Avengers.
That's what it felt like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is something that really worked for me. You know, I mean, everybody knows that, you know, I like that TV serialized stuff. So so it's fun for me, you know, to go through the story and have it kind of develop over time and have these threads. You know, they do those Thanos teases, and they do, even in the first one they do a Thanos tease, and you don't fucking Thanos doesn't do shit directly until the third movie.
But that didn't work for us at all because I saw it and was like,
no, it meant nothing. We were like, who's that? Is that supposed to be a big deal?
So we Google it. It's Thanos. Who's that?
Gotcha.
So yeah, I'll say Bruce Banner is.
I appreciate it more now. Let's just say.
Yeah, for sure. Bruce Banner is interesting. The Hulk is not interesting to me. I found it very interesting.
Hulk smash. That's all there is to say.
Yeah, so the sequences where it's just like, I don't know, it felt like 20 minutes where the Hulk and ScarJo are fighting and it's just not interesting. So I'm not here for that kind of movie, but I did think like the Bruce Banner character is interesting.
Yeah, he was good, and I liked I especially liked the integrated Hulk from the last movie.
Did you really?
Yeah, the one that talks. Like, he doesn't actually even do Hulk stuff for most of the movie. Like, it's very strange. It was like.
But then you also only get that one scene with the straight up Bruce Banner with the scene with Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, it's basic. He's basically Bruce Banner in Hulk form. The Hulk personality is kind of not really there, and that's you know
he looks like Hulk, but
and that's actually a thing I don't like about that character arc. I don't. You know, if we were going to nitpick some stuff, like that's the thing. I don't really like how the Hulk was represented in the last two movies, and the whole. I didn't feel like it really came to anything important.
I do agree that it didn't come to anything, but I liked the idea. And,
yeah.
And I liked it was just, there was something compelling about watching, you know, this giant green monster just act normal after the first movies, where when he turned into the Hulk, he was just like out of control, like jumping up on airplanes and, you know, like smashing everything in sight.
Yeah, I like the 180 degrees character arc across the movies, but there's a part right before he becomes like the integrated Banner Hulk character where I just don't ever hear, you know, because there's the whole thing in Infinity War where Hulk doesn't want to come out and play.
Yeah.
Right? But I just feel like I don't know what the resolution to that is. I don't know.
I'm kind of confused by that, actually. I'm surprised that it doesn't seem like that was filled in. There's actually only one Hulk movie, apparently. I just learned that.
Yeah.
So like Ruffalo has never played the Hulk in his own movie because it was Edward Norton in the first one. So I just think that's strange, like that because it does. I had assumed there was a movie there.
His first movie as the Hulk is Avengers.
Yeah. Like I was sure that they filled in the gap between the Infinity War and Endgame.
No, the story that's playing out in the Avengers movies about Hulk is that's all you get from.
That's all you get.
And they do make the points that Hulk doesn't like. He's not Banner, right? He doesn't like to be associated with Banner, and he also doesn't like what people think about him. And so you see that playing out in Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, right? And so you it's like I see the pieces that they're going towards, but like in Infinity War, when you know lives are really on the line and Banner's like, come on Hulk, what are you doing, man? I need you to fight. And he's like, no, I just want that next beat of like, why not? Like
yeah.
It's like I can intuit that Hulk has some problem, but we just now
They
there
don't
is
tell you.
now there is another thread after Avengers 2 where it ends with the Hulk leaves the fight and he's in the Quinjet and like Black Widow is like trying to bring him back and he turns off the computer. You guys remember that part?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like the end of the movie. He shows up in Thor 3 Ragnarok, and they continue that thread about what was going on with Hulk and Hulk and Bruce, and then he teams up with Thor in that movie. So they do some more about like what's happening with the Hulk and that whole thing, but I just feel like I still get confused like by the end of that character arc of like what was Hulk's main problem, and I get part of it is Hulk and Banner can't really talk to each other, like
right.
and that's the scene we need is for them to talk to each other and for Hulk to be like, I want my own whatever, I don't want to be you or something like that, but okay.
Yeah, I think that's got like Justin talks about this a lot. Our aversion to like zombies as villains because as like the monster in a story because they can't really express intent or complexity of thought. They just destroy. And I mean, like I think that's my problem with Hulk. They sometimes though it does. I don't know. I was trying to, not knowing the comic books and only knowing as much about the Hulk as they tell us in these particular movies. I was trying to figure out like a little more about the psyche. I could not. I was so surprised that the Hulk did not eventually emerge in Infinity Wars after all of that. I thought, they must be building up to some big moment when Hulk is really
the same thing.
Yeah, that it just didn't happen. I did think so. One thing that I didn't know about the movies, I didn't know how Thor and Loki fit in terms of their being in the like Viking pantheon or whatever. So I think it's interesting this premise that they're like aliens and gods and so yeah, I don't know. I think one thing that I just enjoyed about all of the movies and to a somewhat lesser degree WandaVision was that like you just sense there's this vast mythology. So even if I don't understand like what are they referencing or this is clearly about something that I don't know about, like it makes it really rich and textural, all those little indications of the world beyond. I just felt like the fact that they were drawing from such a robust world or set of worlds meant that the writing I don't know, it just seemed more yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, that's the thing. The whole, and, Infinity Saga, as it's called in the comic books, was basically all laid out. So they were able to figure out, well, what is the arc of all of these Avengers movies going to be? Who's the main villain and what's he after? And so they had a lot. And then, of course, they just have, thousands and hundreds and thousands of stories about these characters. So they can really dial in on, and then they know what fans liked, right? So they can really dial in on what are the which versions of these characters have fans liked in the past and which stories did they like and things like that. So they can really hone in on like, okay, what should the MCU be? What should we be telling? Like, what's the best thing to do here? It's almost, so that the adaptation power that they have is really, really huge. So what do you guys think of Avengers? Okay, so sorry, Jesse, you said it was one thing that really.
Okay, yeah. Since we're talking about that,
I was gonna try to guess what it was. Was it like a moment?
Oh, yeah. There's a moment. A specific moment that surprised me. You'll see a thread here, I think, with the things I enjoyed about the movie.
Is it a character moment or like an action moment?
I guess I would call it a character moment, although I guess that's a stretch. It's like, not an action moment. It's certainly not an action moment.
Okay, I only know action moments. Okay, so what was the thing that impressed
I mean,
you?
technically, there's an action going on screen. No, what I really liked the ending in the shawarma place. Like,
Mhm.
I really liked that because, like, you know, New York's been like destroyed at the end. I mean, it was
Yeah.
crazy how much damage was going on there. I was just like, holy shit. It was like out of control, and then the nuclear missile gets involved, and oh my god, it was like so. You know, I mean, I say so over the top. I mean, honestly, like compared to the later stuff, it's actually not even that over the top. But at the time, you know, it seems so extreme. And then, you know, and then Tony Stark's like, "Hey, there's a shawarma place around the corner or whatever. Like, we should go there. You know, it's good." And I'm like, that's ridiculous. That makes no. There's
Mhm.
no way they're open if this shit just happened to New York. Like, come on, like they surely have closed because their shop's destroyed. But at the end, they cut to it and they're like sweeping up and cleaning up, and they're actually there and they're just sitting there silently eating shawarma. To me, that was like that was an amazing moment
Mhm.
for, you know, for a story like this, like a quiet, weird, like they're just eating shawarma. So anyway, yeah, that you'll see you'll see a thread with the moments I enjoyed, stuff that doesn't necessarily pertain to the plot or even necessarily the characters, but I just thought it was a fun addition that was totally unnecessary,
Mhm.
you know, and I guess I appreciate stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great moment and it really helps, I think, humanize the characters.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know,
It's
especially
super
because
casual.
Tony throws, you know, it sounds like a classic offhand comment from Tony
It's like
Stark.
a joke, you know, but it's like, no,
Joke,
he's
and he's
serious.
like, yeah, let's no, I'm hungry. We've worked up an appetite.
There's a real place. And like, of course, they're just gonna sit there because like they just got through all this. So like it kind of
Mhm.
makes sense that like I'm just like, okay, we're just gonna eat. Like, I don't have energy to like
Hmm.
do anything else. You know, it's just kind of it's amazing. It's an amazingly quiet, contemplative, and yet kind of amusing. I don't know.
Hmm.
It hit the right tone for me, and I guess the other main reason I was impressed by it is I was so sure that it was like just a
Just a
ridiculous throwaway
throwaway.
line, you know.
Hmm.
And then they made it real, and so it just I don't know.
Mhm.
It worked against my expectations in a nice way.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so at a totally like different end of the spectrum of the movie, like there's this whole thread going through about Shield and
Hmm.
Coulson and the
Hmm.
idea that they want to use the Tesseract as a weapon. That I think a lot of that was sort of lost on us because we had no context for the
Mm.
background of Shield and all that. So like we picked it up, but it didn't have the punch that I think that it should have had.
Yeah,
And
when it comes
Well,
to the sword and the shield and the Hydra, and I definitely get confused what we're supposed to think about all that stuff. I
yeah.
feel like that's developed maybe a little more in some of the movies we haven't seen, and maybe TV shows as well. So
Mhm.
anyway,
mhm.
yeah.
I mean, I find it interesting, but I remember there's this moment in the movie. You know, they're still on that like flying aircraft carrier, where it's like this awkward scene between Steve Rogers and Tony and Samuel Jackson,
Mhm.
Fury, and where they're upset with him because they've discovered that he wants to use the Tesseract as a weapon, and they feel like, you know, he's like misled them, and it just I said something at the time. It's like this is supposed to be landing in a way that it just isn't for us because we have no frame of reference, and yeah, um,
Well, if I'm not mistaken, now Coulson is a character that was introduced in Iron Man. And
Okay.
yeah, I didn't
we do know a little bit about Shield in terms of it just being sort of like this kind of covert CIA like organization. But throughout most of those movies before Avengers, there's really not a lot of exploration or details beyond that. So a lot of what you're seeing now, we do, you know, I think we see. Well, that movie came out afterwards. So yeah. I guess I'm trying to say there's not a lot you're missing from the movies by the time you get to Avengers 1 and as it relates to Shield and stuff. If I'm remembering correctly. Yeah.
I just expected that
but after, right? Because they had the TV show and
yeah. Now the TV show obviously is called Marvel Agents of Shield, so it's all about Shield.
Yeah. I would hope so.
Yeah, surprise! There's no Shield. So they definitely explore it more, but I just think it's not the most important thing in the Avengers movies. Yeah, for like following the story though.
Yeah, fair enough. It's just it felt like something that ought to carry a big punch, and it seemed a little anticlimactic and rushed.
So one thing that I think you're feeling there too is that the Tesseract is introduced in Captain America's first movie. So the big MacGuffin in that movie is the Tesseract. And that's where we do get all about Hydra. So Hydra is basically what Captain America's fighting in that movie. Basically, they're on the side of the Nazis during the World War.
Oh,
and, yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah. That's why they say like "Hail Hydra." Okay, I knew that was a Nazi reference, but I didn't know they were literally Nazis.
Yeah, they're literally Nazis, and it's a big deal that they were literally Nazis. That comes up, but they're basically a fascistic military organization, like covert, and and so when you get to Avengers 1 and you see the Tesseract, you should be like, oh, that was the big thing in that movie that we knew the bad guys wanted and had a lot of power. It was almost played like what's it called? Indiana Jones, the not the Holy
Temple
Grail, but what was the big thing in that? Can't remember what it's called.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, the Lost Ark, the Ark of the Covenant. That's what it was.
Ark of the Covenant. Yeah.
Yeah, which was in that movie about Nazis trying to get the Ark of the Covenant for world power. So it's a very similar storyline there. So that's another thing. Yeah, when you see the Tesseract in Avengers 1, that's some of the subtext there is the audience, some of the audience would have known like that was a big deal. And like messing with that is really crazy. Now what we don't know, which is a really cool surprise later, is that the Tesseract is housing an Infinity Stone.
Yeah,
and that's where real power comes from.
Right. Yeah. That was the whole thing. Yeah, that was a huge thing. Yeah, Tesseract. I the first time I heard the term Tesseract was Interstellar. It's weird how like Tesseract seems to always tie in with like time travel stuff. Like I guess it's like it's the fourth. I don't know. Like the fourth dimension is time or something. Yeah, like that's sort of that. It's just weird. Like because like seemingly those stories have nothing to do with each other, but they both like see us on this idea of the Tesseract as something that has some relationship to traveling through time. And so anyway,
before watching that movie, I literally thought that the Tesseract was something invented by A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, it's apparently in A Wrinkle in Time too. I
was very confused.
I'm really surprised by that. That was like in the first movie, I took the Tesseract, as you said, as a MacGuffin, like that it was just a thing that, the bad guys want it and the good guys have to keep them from getting it. And, and then there's also these other like lesser bad guys, I guess, or at least ambiguous guys or something, who maybe want to use it for a weapon or something. But just to say, like, like I took it that it didn't really matter what it was, so I didn't really worry about it, in the first one. Like, it didn't really bother me that I had no idea, because I felt like it didn't, at that point at least, it didn't matter. I think it makes sense that later on they, either it's a retcon or it's from the comics, or it was a retcon in the comics, or whatever. Anyway, the point is, like, they made it, tie in, which is good.
Wait, what are you saying is a retcon?
Just that it has a Infinity Stone,
Oh, I see.
Like, I don't know that that's a retcon, but I'm just saying, like, it kind of feels that way since there's
no, all of the Infinity Stones have a housing. Yeah, that's kind of a theme of the stones. Is like because most beings cannot touch them because they're so powerful. That most of the times when you see them, they're in some sort of housing that
Okay.
that allows them to be either manipulated or the energy to be used in some way because of this. And fun fact, the Infinity Stones have a really, really interesting origin. The mythology behind the stones, which was not really specified in the movies, is that basically the reason that they even have the powers they have is because the stones used to be they're basically each stone is like a part of this galactic entity that used to exist. So there was this consciousness that had the power of space and time and power and soul and all the 6 powers of Infinity Stone was part of this being's power as it existed in the universe. And so at a certain point, that being, I, I think it's some sort of Dr. Manhattan kind of thing where it got like a lot of ennui about life or existence or something, but basically like decided to split itself up into these parts. So at some point the stones could like recombine and this entity would exist again. But so that's what they're kind of playing at a bit in Age of Ultron when they scan Loki's scepter, which has the Mind Stone, and Tony discovers that there's, the first thing he says to Bruce is, "What does it look like it's doing? It looks like it's thinking." And they have a sense of there's some consciousness that's in there, and they end up calling that Ultron, right? When Ultron comes online and he's talking to Jarvis, and he's like, "Where am I? This feels weird. This is strange." It's basically because that's the entity is now getting this consciousness that it hadn't had in eons. Because it was like dormant in the stone or whatever. So anyway, that's a bigger, crazier thing with Infinity Stones, and there's a set of stones for each universe because there's multiple universes in the Marvel universe. But the stones can only actually have power in their original universe. So like if you got Infinity Stones from the universe next door, they wouldn't work in this one, kind of thing. But yeah, just throw some mythology at you. So that's why the stones even have power, is because they came from this entity that the stones used to be.
Yeah, I feel like there's a scene in one of the movies where they explain that, where somebody explains that in a really, really fast and truncated way. And
yeah, they don't say where the stones came from, but they do say they basically say they came from the Big Bang, which you could maybe think of as when the entity made himself into these parts. Some sort of Big Bang happened.
Yeah, it's really something.
What did you guys think of Avengers 2, Age of Ultron?
Justin.
So yeah, number 2. Yeah. So I really liked number 2. I think number 2 is the first one I fully enjoyed.
Nice.
I found there to be.
We only had one chance before, so it's pretty good track record.
Yeah. I mean, I did enjoy the first one, but I found myself like really enjoying the second one.
Because you knew the characters more, right?
I think it helped a lot, but I also liked the plot more. It has this classic kind of sci-fi AI comes to life, but he's not really evil in the normal way. I don't know. I liked the way they portrayed the Ultron character. I liked the voice. I liked when his first appearance, when he's in the like broken down robot body. Like there was something really, I don't know, effective about that scene. And I liked the voice. I liked his like ideas.
I probably liked that scene because it was basically our horror scene.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. It's pushing those buttons. But like he wasn't just like, and I think this holds for Thanos as well. But he wasn't just like I'm gonna kill humans because like they're shitty or something. There was a more like specific rationale than that. You know, he was like thoughtful about it in a weird way, and you know, all this. I mean, the Vision stuff.
Oh man,
Was really interesting. And then when they have their confrontation and they have this like discussion about stuff, it just got like really sci-fi. And I think that was a context that I enjoyed more so than the first, which you know, I guess is technically also sci-fi, but it's more just like aliens attacking, and this was more, you know, artificial intelligence.
There was more discussion about the philosophy around what they were doing and why,
Yeah,
and wrestling with like the, you know, what is Tony right? Should he make a pseudo armor around the world, or is that wrong? You know, and I think
yeah,
what the movies do really well is get into these philosophical debates. The third one, Captain America: Civil War, which is probably my favorite Marvel movie, which is saying a lot because I love a lot of them. The whole basic central thing is a philosophical debate between Tony and Captain America that drives the entire action of the whole thing, and it's really well done. So if you liked what they were doing in that one, Civil War is really good for that kind of like, it's an action movie, but we're gonna stop and talk.
mm-hmm.
We're gonna
Yeah,
talk and like see who's right and wrong and why, and go from there.
Yeah. I always, I don't know, this is just me. Like you know, I enjoyed like the first 45 minutes of Star Wars before anything happens. You know, I do like those quiet scenes with the characters just like talking in rooms and stuff. Obviously the action is like the release, and you know, it's exciting and stuff, but yeah, I think I get more out of those scenes. The other thing that this movie had was, I mean, you know, it introduces the Wanda character as well as Vision, and you know, so this was like, you know, this was the reason I was even watching these things. And I think it's interesting that, you know, when we're introduced to her character, what she primarily does in this first movie is, you know, send visions to, you know, the Avengers characters. Like they have these weird.
He shows them their worst nightmare, basically.
Yeah, that's what it was. I started getting confused by it because it seemed like the visions were also like prophecies or something, or pseudo prophecies, or like they contained real information, right? Like, isn't it true that like one of those visions is how they discover that is how they discover that there's an Infinity Stone in the Tesseract? Doesn't that come from uh doesn't that come from one of those visions?
Thor's vision.
Yes, Thor does see that the stones have an important role to play here. But the way it actually happens, I believe Ultron, he's giving a lecture. I forgot. I think to the Doctor or to Scarlet. I can't remember. To Black Widow. I can't remember, but basically he's saying, you know, humans don't often look beneath the surface, and he takes the scepter and he breaks it, and then you see the stone inside, and then he places the stone into the vision, the body that will become the vision. So that's how we know the stone's inside. And I think in Thor's vision, which was a weird little sidetrack he makes to have that vision. It's super like, I don't think that's the best writing. The way it just feels really sweaty. But he's like, oh, by the way,
Asgard and get like a
well, he didn't even go to. We didn't even go to Asgard. He went to some place on Earth that was like, oh, by the way, there's a mystical place on Earth that I can go to have a vision real quick. Didn't I mention that earlier? No. Okay, let's not talk about it. But so in his vision, he has a vision of the stones. But I think by that point, the stone is in Vision, and he just points to it or something, if I remember correctly. So
yeah,
that was where I got confused. It was like initially I thought, oh, she's just like tapping into their minds and showing them, you know, like a lost sort of Man in Black manipulation or it or something, you know, kind of thing.
No, it's more than that. It's it shows them what they will do almost. Like there
Yeah,
was
but then it was like, oh, it's actually like a vision of the future or something. But then it's like weird because I don't think they or she even knows about that stuff. So I
but
got
that's the
like,
thing, it's a little tricky because I think it's sort of vision of the future, but that's because their worst fear is in the future, and their worst fear happens to be this thing. You know what I mean? So I think
it's a coincidence.
I yeah, I don't even know if coincidence is the word, but basically, like, she does the mind trick on Tony, and she basically sees him use the scepter to destroy the world, right? That's what it
Hmm.
appeared to be, right?
Right.
When in reality, um, um, and he talks about like he saw all the Avengers die around him, and the worst thing was that he didn't die, and that's what prompts him to like go forward with Ultron and Vision, was because he had this fear that he wouldn't be enough to stop what was coming. So part of it is prophetic in a weird way because there is a threat coming. Thanos is coming. The fate of the world is coming, but it also is related to just kind of what their actions might be and their sort of worst fears about that, right? Like Thor's fear of him like destroying Asgard, through an action or something like that. So I think
Yeah.
it's a Venn diagram of it being a coincidence, um, and then of it being like a prophecy thing. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the idea that the hallucination or whatever it is causes Tony, the question for Tony is like, is this a result of doing this thing, or is doing this thing what I need to do to prevent the thing that I saw in the hallucination? That's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a classic kind of vision dilemma that you see in TV, but I thought it worked well. I thought this movie had a lot of humor. That there was a lot of funny
Mm-hmm.
scenes in it, which I liked, and the interpersonal scenes with like at the party before Ultron reveals himself to them. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
those scenes were really
Oh, right, the
enjoyable.
Thor's hammer
The
thing.
Thor's
Like,
hammer scene was
yeah,
great.
yeah. They're just like hanging, you know.
Hmm.
I love those
It's like the
scenes.
it's like the Swarmer thing where it's like they're
Hmm.
off the clock.
Exactly,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
One
But
of
I
the
love
best,
the when Captain America tries to pick it up, it like wobbles a little bit. They're like setting
and
that
you
up.
guys will never know what how that messed with the minds of fans for years before we get to Avengers
Hmm.
Endgame, where we see that getting paid off, and the moment
Hmm.
of Thor saying, "I knew it," and what that because people had
Yeah.
speculated for years, still speculated for years, was he really worthy? Wasn't he? Did he know he could pick it up and decided not to because he didn't want to
Mm.
insult Thor? Or like what was
Hmm.
his what happened when he sort of picks it up and it moves a little bit, but so is it him being gracious and going, I'm not going to take this away from Thor, or did he even know he could do it? There's like all these questions, so
Yeah.
when you're getting all these years and you get to Endgame and it's the culmination of 10 years of films, and it's just like
Hmm.
a million movies and stories all in one and clashing in this final climax, and all of our heroes are getting their ass kicked. It's like, how can they be losing? Again,
Hmm.
they lost the first
Hmm.
time in Infinity
Yeah.
War. And then you see I mean, that's one of the best moments in all of
Yeah.
them. Not only
Yeah.
that whole fight,
Yeah.
but just the hammer lifting up slowly with the dirt levitating, and then it flies away, and we're like, and then it passes Thor, and you're like, wait, what the hell? Like, who called
Hmm.
it? And like, guys, I'm feeling the electric vibes I had in the theater when like
Hmm.
it ricochets back to Cap, and you're like,
Hmm.
holy fucking shit.
Hmm. Hmm.
You just can't believe
Yeah.
that you would see that. Now, obviously, if you read the comics, you know that was a thing in the comics, but I didn't know that was a thing in the comics.
Hmm.
And then that whole little the next couple minutes of the fight where he's pulling out moves with the hammer that Thor has never even shown on screen. He's inventing new moves, fighting with the hammer and the shield. Like, it's just like, and the thing that I love about these movies is just that like human spirit element, and like that thing that we see time and time again in stories, right? Of like, what can we achieve when we are like really put to the test, when it really, really like matters, and that's the kind of movie, that's the kind of moment when it's like, this is it. You can call lightning down for the first time ever and create like new combo moves to fight this fucking, alien who wants to destroy your planet for the second time. Like, that kind of stuff is great. And so that's what's great about those moments, like you guys are saying, when it's like really low key and they're just hanging around. Like, one of my favorite scenes in all the movies is right before that, right in the party scene between a Black Widow and Bruce Banner, and they're just talking over drinks. And for a moment, it becomes a noir scene. It's a 100% 1940 scene from 1945. I've even watched that scene in black and white, and it's really effective. Like, Scarlett Johansson, it's one of my favorite performances of hers, and that's in that one scene. Whatever she's doing, it's exactly why she's a superstar. And it's just this one little thing of them flirting with each other, and trying to figure out their relationship. And then if you guys have seen the movies, there's this whole bittersweet thing where like they never really get together,
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
Yeah, and I think the whole the thing with Captain America and the hammer and all of that, it's just really nice then when he he goes back in time, in the very, very end of the last movie, and he goes and he puts the stones back, and then he just goes and he lives his life. And then he comes back when he's old.
Which is the exact that's the exact right ending for this character's arc. That is, he's a man, because his initial defining trait was he's a man out of time. He missed living his life. Everybody he loved was dead by the time he got, got thawed out. And so the fact that they were able to use the sci-fi stuff to give him a character arc that he could never, get without a sci-fi element or a fantasy element, and it just is exactly the right thing. And he gets to have his cake and eat it too, because he didn't sort of like didn't negate all the stuff we'd seen before, right? Which can backfire when they do that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, because he's already suffered, he's already sacrificed, he's already done, he's already put everything that he wanted on hold to. It's sort of it's a little bit the opposite of what they do with Stark, where it's like, he really is redeeming himself over the course of these movies by like sacrificing and then finally like legit, because like obviously the big ending of the first movie is that he's prepared to sacrifice himself flying into space to close the thing, but then in the end for him to really die, and I'm not a Gwyneth Paltrow fan, but I think that scene, his death scene in the final movie is really effective.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have time for what I could say about Iron Man and his whole character arc, besides how awesome it is. And if you guys, if you go back and watch the first movie, the end of that movie is him saying, "I am Iron Man," and for that to be his last words, coming up against the biggest fight the galaxy the universe has ever seen, and him managing to do the thing he's always done, which is basically outsmart everyone and out-sacrifice everyone. I just love so many moments of that last little beat, but the fact that he forethought, what if Thanos gets my new glove, the Iron Gauntlet, the Iron Man technology that's holding the new stones, and he has this he has this backup plan, where basically he touches it with his armor and the stones migrate to his hand, and like that sleight of hand thing where you don't, Thanos does the snap and you're like, it didn't work, like what's happening? And then he's like, I am inevitable, and then you cut to that moment and they hold it for a beat. It's like, and I am Iron Man, and he snap. I mean, that's just like, guys, it's just the best thing ever. It's just really like I could just write sonnets about how that makes me feel, you know, and that self-actualization, you know. It's like you know, few among us will live life getting to that level of understanding of your purpose, you know, and what you're willing to do. And the way they dramatize that stuff is so effective. And then, of course, he pays the price for it, right? You know, and that's one of the things I really love about the MCU is they're willing to let it be messy. You know, even with the snap, right? When they undid the snap, the people didn't prevent them from ever snapping 5 years ago. It just brought them back into a world where they were missing. That's messy as hell. That's really fucking messy to deal with as a writer going forward. And it makes the relationships all weird and gross in a way. And like, there's just a lot of mess that I think lesser writers would have said, "Oh no, we undo the snap," and then they never were disappeared or something, you know, or whatever.
But, you know, I think they would have had a major. So I was anticipating this, and I really, really could not imagine them having a scenario where, you know, Tony Stark's kid just vanishes. You know, like because there's like 5 years worth of life has happened, and you know, most of the characters that we've been following, they don't have a lot at stake in that 5 years. But if this were actually happening, you know, over those 5 years, children born, milestones happening in people's lives, what they could have done was just not introduced any aspects of the life in those intervening 5 years that would have been like pretty tragic if you'd have erased them, but they would have still been there, right? And so the one exception to that was this child. And you know, I feel like it's a little bit of a loophole for him to be like, okay, remember, all those people are just coming back to right now, everything is going to be the same except all those people are going to be back. I don't know.
Which is crazy. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, which is crazy because as we see in WandaVision with the Monica Rambeau character, which is the first time we really see actual footage, so you guys know, of like people returning from the snap and what that was like in those moments, you know, very leftovers, right?
Very leftovers.
Yeah, super. Yeah.
But a shitload more people.
And
like
season 5, the incident and stuff from Lost.
And the thing that again is shows how they're willing to be messy is those people came back right where they left off. So if you were on a cruise ship 5 years ago, when you came back, you're drowned in the ocean now because that boat's not there, right? And so that makes the world just so messy. You know, like imagine you were standing in your house and now your house is demolished 5 years later and there's a, you know, whatever, like, where are you? What are you? Did you come back there? Like, there's a lot of weirdness to saying everyone just comes back to where they disappeared from, you know? But okay, so Avengers 2. So what's your rating? You guys both said you liked it a bit more than the first one.
Oh, I have one more thing I want to just ask about number 2. I have more to say about Endgame, but I'm just
Endgame was my favorite.
I'm trying to hold on. So they do another Thanos tease at the end of number 2. This is something that I find hilarious. So the first movie comes out in 2012. We get a Thanos tease. The second movie comes out in 2015. We get another Thanos tease. Thanos does not appear until 2018, the Infinity War movie. I just think it's crazy that they did that. Okay, that's not my question. My question is, I just like, in terms of teasing stuff, like, that's just like a lot. Anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression of the Thanos tease at the end of Ultron is it's revealed that he's like actually behind Ultron in some way. Did I interpret that right?
No, not behind Ultron. What do you mean?
Because doesn't he say, well, I guess I'll have to do this myself or something?
Yeah. So he's basically talking about he's basically saying, because what he wants is the actual stones themselves, and that's what he sent Loki and the Chitauri to do with the first attack. So I think that
Right.
mid-credit scene is about that failing.
It's picking up the failure from the first movie?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. See, I thought they were trying to say that like he was secretly behind Ultron the whole time. So that's not true.
I don't think he has any way to know about Ultron in the,
Well, yeah, they never mention it again, so I think you're
Yeah.
probably right. Because that was going to be my main disappointment. Because I thought the whole thing of his stuff at the end of the first movie and the second movie was saying like there was this guy in the shadows who's secretly behind this. Much like Mr. Lashad or whatever on Expose. Like he's like running things from behind the scenes, but he's not actually. You don't know who he is. He's kind of a figure in the shadows. I thought that's what they were doing with the first two movies. So the tease. This is where the teasers get weird sometimes. Like sometimes they don't pertain to the story that they're actually attached to. So it gets a little confusing. So that's actually just a second Thanos teaser from the first movie that they put it in the second movie. So the second movie is really just a detour that doesn't connect to Thanos at all. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, then it makes sense that they never bring it up again.
Yeah.
But I was kind of disappointed because I thought the plot was so interesting, and I liked the idea that like, oh, Thanos is behind all of this. He even did Ultron, and they could have revisited the Ultron stuff when they were doing the time travel. And they like went back to the first movie time period and stuff. Anyway, that was just a hope that I had because I enjoyed this story so much. All right. Well, anyway, that's not what it is. So be it.
Yeah, because I think it has to be about Tony's, hubris and fear about the future that leads him to create Ultron, and not like somehow Thanos created Ultron or
yeah. I mean, they were vague about it, so I thought they were trying to say like he added some element that made Ultron do the thing that Thanos wanted him to do. Like I don't know. I thought they were like vaguely alluding to something like that.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's what I haven't heard.
Okay. I mean, I think if that's what it was, you would know. So that's why I wanted to ask. Yeah. Anyway, I would say number 2 was probably like I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give. If you get the highest rating to everything, then like it just sort of means nothing. So I'll say something like A-.
Okay.
Because I enjoyed it. There were probably things in it that I didn't like, but it was probably like in terms of its own like self-contained story, it was probably my favorite of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I liked the last 2, but they have certain problems that this story didn't have. So anyway, just to say, like it gets messier after this.
Yes.
So as you were pointing out, so yeah. Anyway, I think this was like in terms of just if you just want to watch one Avengers movie.
Yep.
I think to me it would be this one.
Yeah, I really feel the same way. This is self-contained in a way where you can just kind of rewatch it and it's fun and exciting versus 3 and 4 are really go to some dark places and are really long and drawn out, and there's a lot of great stuff in it, but it's not easy to just like, oh, I want to watch some Avengers. Let me go into like 6 hours of like pathos about humanity.
Right. Right. Exactly. So yeah. I think it's if you. Because you don't have to watch anything else. I mean, it did help that I knew the characters too. I think coming in, like having an idea who they are, how they related to each other, it made all of that stuff that was kind of awkward in the first movie start to feel very natural. And I pretty much, I mean, I got into like all the characters more or less like past this point. I was pretty invested in all their individual like things. So yeah, I think it was a big leap forward, and I think it really encouraged me to keep watching them.
Nice.
So yeah, do you want to give a rating? Did you rate the first one?
No.
Do you want to rate the first one too while you're at it?
I'm just gonna stick with Thetas across the board.
Thetas across the board.
I'm gonna say that of the movies, I think this was. I thought. Let's see. Maybe like I don't want to give an A because that seems too high for anything. So.
Oh, you're one of those.
Yeah, I'm one of those. Yeah, so I'll give this one a B.
Even though it deserves an A, I just don't want to give it an A.
Correct. And then I'll give.
So you really give it an A?
So no, but I will give the next one an A.
Okay.
I think Infinity War. I really like. I won't give an A plus.
So wait, sorry, I'm getting confused now. The first one got a B. Is that what you said?
First one. Okay, I'll give the first one a B minus. I'll give
the first one's a B minus. This one's a B.
Plus.
B plus. Okay.
No, I'll give it a B. Okay. I'll give the third one an A, and I'll give the final one. I need to think a little more about the final one because, it's. I don't know. I'm not really sure how to judge it because there is some. It does have some issues. But I want to talk about this next one. I want to talk about Infinity Wars. I want to talk about my favorite thing about Infinity Wars. Possibly my favorite thing about the whole MCU.
Doctor Strange?
No. Dr. Thor calling Rocket Rabbit.
Rabbit?
I love this running gag. I love the relationship between Thor and Rocket, and I love the insistence and all. And there's another scene where the other Asgard.
It's an Asgard thing. I was curious. It's like, is that what rabbits look like, or do they just like not know any other name?
I don't care.
I don't even know what the explanation is.
I love it so much. I love what the Guardians of the Galaxy people infuse into the story. I don't know. I thought
that must have been interesting seeing them come into this story, having followed the main Avengers, and then like you get this whole other group of people show up. Because you guys hadn't seen their movies before, right?
Right. That's right. And it really, I think it helps lift the movie because there's a lot of really heavy stuff going on. So to see like Groot, I mean, who's straight up adorable.
Vin Diesel, right?
So you guys missed the whole. You missed the whole thing where Groot was an adult before, and he, not to spoil anything, but there's a reason you could probably guess why he's now sort of a sapling growing up again.
Is it the time stone?
No, it was a death, if you will.
A death, okay.
Yeah, so that's a whole thing from those movies. Is so when they cast Vin Diesel as Groot, it made sense, is what I'm saying.
Okay, because I thought that was like the weirdest casting decision to cast Vin Diesel to say I am Groot for 2 movies. I was like, what are they doing? Okay,
So that's all he ever says, of course, but it, in their original movies, he's an adult Groot, and it makes sense to have Vin Diesel play that. Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. I think Groot's adorable.
That changes things.
I think it's oddly emotional when Groot cuts off his own arm to.
One of my favorite parts.
The handle. Like, how could that? If you write that down, how could you think that would possibly work? But it really works.
Probably.
I guess.
But no, it really works because you know why? Because of the character development. Because Groot was playing the apathetic teenager part the whole time, and everyone was like, "Come on, put the game down. Oh, pay attention, whatever." And right again, when he has his call to adventure, right when it's like, "Oh shit, like something needs to happen. Someone's gonna do something." And and that's coming off of the climax of like Thor. Opening the machine there at Nebuchadnezzar and like getting blasted with this energy and like he's about to die and like he needs the axe, and like, but we don't, where's the handle, and like, and again, this is not something we've ever seen Groot do where he like makes his arm into a handle and like chops off himself, again, a theme of sacrifice. And then, and the cool thing for fans is like, not only does Thor have Stormbreaker, the best new weapon we've seen him have, after Mjolnir, the hammer being like the weapon, right, of Thor, he's got this new thing, this Thanos killer, right? But now it's powered by Groot's own strength as what he, so it's like this extra cool thing on top of the thing that was already super cool. So when he's using it, it has this history behind it, right? And I totally agree. Yeah, the Guardians, like, they're, again, like, the way Marvel does their movies is there's a genre to all this stuff, and the Guardians movies are more family friendly. They're lighter, they're funnier. I think it's partially because they're in space. You have to take things less seriously in space. You have to go one or the other because it's just literally an out of this world concept, right? So I think they lean towards the funnier stuff, and being in space and it being crazier stuff happening, I think helps make that land better. And you can even tell from watching the movies when they cut to Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like a different movie. Like their pacing is different, the tone of the writing is different. And then to see Thor like literally crash into that and then sort of take charge in this way, where he's like, Rabbit, you're clearly in charge. This is clearly your ship. Tell me, I'll talk directly. And that whole thing with Quill, and everyone's like, you're not a man. That's a man. You're a dude, And he's like, you're one sandwich away from being fat. What are you talking about? And that whole thing where it's like this weird macho thing they're playing. And Thor's like, dude, I'm like 2,000 years old. Like, I'm not gonna like have a pissing contest with you. You're like, I just lost everything. Like, you know what I mean? Like where he's coming from. And and that's the thing with Rocket. They get a lot in their earlier movies. They get a lot of real drama and like sympathy from that character. Even though he is mostly like he's sort of like a Sawyer character, where he's the anti-hero, he's sarcastic, but there's really something painful that he's using that stuff to mask. And so when so even in the scene with him and Thor, where Thor's like, and that was an interesting choice where like Thor is like crying, you've got the God of Thunder like crying in a scene about losing all the people in his life systematically, and like he's got to go. He's not done with the fight. Like he's got to go get a new weapon and keep fighting. And Rocket's like, okay, gotta be captain now. Let me go talk to this guy and play therapist, But that's coming from Rocket having his own like traumas, based on his backstory. So they, for like for like an animated raccoon, he's such a great character.
Yeah, I mean they're a very funny sort of ragtag crew, but they do a lot of serious plot development. They get a lot of advancement out of that. I felt sort of similarly to Peter Parker, where I've never been interested in Spider-Man. I saw the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, the first one. I thought it was just boring and awful. It's not my thing. But this plucky like spider boy that they got in this, like, he's got a charm, and a definitely pathos that comes along with it. Yeah, I thought the character stuff in this movie worked really well. I liked the stuff with Thanos and the daughters. I thought it had it all. Doctor Strange, you mentioned Doctor Strange. I am intrigued, but I just think I need to see more of that character. I do think it's such a shame to cast Benedict Cumberbatch and have him do an American accent.
Well, sadly, Doctor Strange is American, so
that is sad. That is sad.
It's sad when anyone's an American, isn't it?
Well,
including us. No.
Yeah.
Okay, Infinity War. Okay, so yeah, I agree. That version of Peter Parker is literally my favorite. I have liked most of the Spider-Man movies to some degree. The other actors do all right. What works best is they cast a younger actor to play a younger Spider-Man, and that is what Peter Parker is supposed to be. He's a wisecracking kid who's sort of in over his head, and he's got powers that he's going to constantly grow into. And I think they just nail that. The actor is great. Tom Holland is great. And what they give him to play against with Tony, the father-son dynamic there is really, really, really well done. And if you guys will remember the beginning of Iron Man, sorry, not the beginning of Iron Man, the beginning of Infinity War when we first see Tony and Piper, I'm sorry, Pepper walking in the park, and he's talking about, he's got this new suit, blah blah blah. He just in case, just in case I need a suit, I got this new nano thing, which by the way is the coolest fucking thing ever. And but he tells her he had a dream that they had a son, right? And so, you know, 15 minutes later, introduce his son character for the movies, right? And having to sort of deal with that responsibility and I love their whole thing when he sneaks up on the ship and and one of the things I love about Spider-Man is really like that first fight in the park when the children of Thanos show up, and that's actually one of my favorite. Just those moments in movies that you like because it's all about the build up to something bigger that's going to happen. Like I really love that part when Banner crashes into the Sanctum, where Doctor Strange is, and they go over the whole thing about what the Infinity Stones are, and Thanos is coming, and people who haven't talked to each other in years have to be like put their differences aside because now there's a whole new galactic war heading their way, and then it's like, wait a minute, you feel that breeze? What's that? And they slowly like go outside and it's like this chaos and you don't know why there's chaos and people are running away and our characters are running towards the danger, and then you see this huge spaceship, you're like, what the fuck is happening? And then like this wind is blasting everywhere and Doctor Strange does a spell and like silences everything and like Tony's like, oh, that's cool, like I couldn't have done that. And they've been having a rivalry this whole time,
right.
and you get to see like, okay, what do you got, Wizard? What do you got, Iron Man? Like, let's. And then I love Tony be like, sorry, Earth is closed today.
Yeah,
It's just like the humor there, but yeah, I thought all of that stuff with those characters like teaming up and you sort of slowly get to see them. Oh, that was my point, was the big fight that ensues right after that, where Peter's on a school trip to MoMA or whatever, and he gets his spider sense, and he's like, "Oh shit, alien invasion again!" And he, jumps into the fight, and Tony's like, "Hey kid, there's a wizard we're trying to save, and there's some bad guys. Like, have at it, And like, he just joins the fight, and he has no idea what's going on, but he's just gonna like fight his best, and I just think they show his powers really well too. His agility, his ability, like when they're flying through the streets and the guy with telekinesis like flicks a billboard at him and it's like, it looks like it crashes into him, but he's stuck to the other side and he flips around and he can, he's still going. Like that thing that is really great about Spider-Man, where he's got those heightened senses, and you throw something at him, he's probably going to figure out a way to throw it right back at you without like missing a beat,
Yeah,
but
he's like smashing everything.
Yeah, he's got this finesse to him, and this agility that they really do a great job showing. I love Infinity War. There's such great stuff. I mean, it's such an epic movie where your characters lose. Who would have saw that coming? And lose in a big way. I mean, like big loss. Like, who's ever lost half of life on Earth? I mean, the universe, right? Now, one thing to note for you guys for the mythology, and maybe, I don't know if some of the issues that you find in some of the stuff with Thanos and Infinity Stones might come from knowing this little tidbit, which is that in the comics, there's a different motivation Thanos has for wanting the Infinity Stones and wanting to take half of life in the galaxy, in the universe. And I think in the comics it worked better. The motivation is more straightforward. Here in the movies, they make it a philosophical thing where, because his planet, had a terrible backstory and had a lot of loss of life due to lack of resources, he is enlightened in thinking that the universe needs to be balanced. And if I destroy half of all life, then there's more abundance in the long run. And I just feel like there's a logic there that's easy to to break apart, which I don't like. I like that he's got a strong ideology, but I just think it's like not a great idea to the solution to the problem. But in the in the comics, Thanos is in love with a character who is Death. Basically, she's a female. Sort of, she basically is the embodiment of the concept of death, and he is trying to woo her, and he decides
Mm.
in order to get her favor, to make her fall in love with him, whatever, he's going to do this huge thing, use Infinity Stones to kill half of life in the galaxy, which is the thing she would want to please her. So in the comics, it's more of a means to an end. It's not like a philosophy he has about like the greater needs of the universe. It's more
Huh.
about like he's trying to get this girl to like him, and they just didn't have I don't think they had the ability to throw that motivation in there like that, because you would have to introduce the Death character and that whole concept, and he would have needed his own movie, I think, to make a thing like that work. So I think they had to come up with another motivation that also makes him not seem like a one-dimensional villain, right? He's not just
Uh-huh.
like,
Uh-huh.
I hate everything, but he's doing
Yeah.
it what he thinks is a sense of mercy, right? So
Yeah.
he's obviously deluded, but he's got good intentions in that delusion.
Yeah, and I thought that made it more interesting because, yeah, he's not just, oh, I want to kill all humans or I want to subjugate all of Earth or
Hmm.
whatever. It's like,
Hmm.
he has this line about, rich or poor, it doesn't matter, everybody equal, but I'm going to take away half of the population because,
Hmm.
the universe is unsustainable as it is or something. And there is a logic to that.
Hmm.
Now, some might argue if you have all the Infinity Stones, you have this kind of power. Couldn't you do something else that wouldn't involve wiping out half of all
Like make twice as many
creature?
resources.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for
So that's why I think
example.
the logic falls apart, because
Hmm.
it doesn't work because it's constricted by the source material, right? Which is like, well, what he wants to do is destroy half of the universe,
Uh-huh.
and so when they give him a different reason, it doesn't quite work, because if he wanted to just like create more life or have more abundance, he could do that instead, instead
Hmm.
of like reducing it, but.
Hmm.
But I do love the huge, stakes that provides, right, to the characters. Because I mean,
Yeah.
when you have a super team up group who teams up to defend, like you have these what they call like the street level fighters, which are like some of the characters that they've done on like the Netflix Marvel shows, like Daredevil and Luke Cage. These characters who like kind of protect their neighborhood, like their power level and their skills and things like that is good enough to fight like that kind of local level, right? And then you have like the city kind of level defenders, which is like Spider-Man, right? Like almost anything that can kind of happen on a normal case for New York, like Spider-Man can kind of deal with that, sort of on his own, right? And then you have like the next level up, which is like, okay, the planet's at stake, right? Like no one of these characters by themselves can deal with that. So then you have the Avengers to deal with that. So it is, I did always love that they were able to come up with an even bigger risk. So it's not just the planet is destroyed, right, that we have to stop, which is a
Hmm.
really big, really big
That's
obstacle.
pretty big.
But
Yeah.
it's pretty big. But it's like, okay, now the entire known universe, places you'll never hear about or ever know about or visit will be affected, and they will have no idea why this happened. That's the other thing about the blip is it's like everybody who doesn't know why it happened doesn't know why it happened, right?
Hmm.
There's what countless mythologies that are now created about what happened there.
Right. Right.
I mean, I guess there's sort of like the leftover story comes
Yeah,
from
it should be a
too, right?
guilty remnant or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, what? Hey, one day God took some people, and then 5 years later, He just brought them back. I don't know why. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much good stuff with Infinity War. You guys got to. I know you watch Black Panther, so you come back to Wakanda.
Hmm.
All those great characters.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I one thing I'll say about these movies as a whole is that they really remind me of, and it's even more true of Infinity War, and even maybe more so Endgame. They just bring together like such a huge number of characters, and also such a huge number of famous actors. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy how many people are in these movies. It reminds me of the Harry Potter movies in a way. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
how do
Mm-hmm.
you get this many people? Like,
Mm-hmm.
to a degree, like any one of these people could actually just carry a movie.
And they have.
So it's, yeah, and they do, yeah. So it's just crazy to put them together like
Yeah.
that and have them bounce off each other. I totally agree that the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, and then putting Thor with them and like getting comedy out of Thor. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
as well as pathos. Like, it was definitely interesting. It really helped, I think, to sort of connect to the Thor character. Although I also enjoyed him in the second movie, but because he's a weird character when you first meet him. So I think
Yeah.
that stuff from Infinity War really, really helped. And it was interesting. There's this like sacrifice stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that like so like Wanda destroys the Mind Stone, but like Thanos has the Time Stone, and so I'll just hit
Mm-hmm.
rewind
Oh
and
yeah, that is such
Gotta love
undo
that.
the thing.
Gotta love
Like,
that. You got. I mean that's why the writing. I'm just so impressed with the writing because they're able to do that thing that great writers do, which is write themselves into a corner, right? Like literally, how are we gonna get out of this? What are we gonna do? And then, oh crap, here's the next thing, and yeah, that whole thing was. Wanda finally just going to sacrifice and destroy the Mind Stone and destroy her love, and it's Thanos is like wiped out all the other heroes, and he's got all the stuff, like no one can stop him. This is the last final moment, and she did it. Oh, we can rest. Thanos won't get the stone, and then it's like, oh, by the way, don't forget I got the Time Stone. Want, and just rewind that bitch, and then it's like. And that's why Thanos is such a great villain because I don't love him completely, but it's one of those things where I can't deny how great he is in terms of being the obstacle that forces the characters to have to grow and change and do better and be stronger, and him able to outthink them, and he's not just stronger or whatever, he's actually super smart, and really self-assured in a scary way, I think it's really only in Endgame where he shows any fear, I think, by the end of things not playing out the way he wants them to. Probably in that last moment before Tony does his snap. But there's
you're
so
right.
many
Yeah,
great moments
hugely
in that.
confident.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think there
then
was something amazing about, and I guess this is just like classic, when you tell a long story, and Infinity War and Endgame are kind of just one big thing.
It's a two-part story.
It's like, so we're like hitting like the low point in a way
Yeah.
at the end. And so it's like, it's like the Empire Strikes Back sort of thing where the story kind of reaches this like peak of interest, and it's like, how can they possibly like carry on after this? Like, it's so crazy,
Yes.
what happens at the end. So anyway, I was impressed with that because the first two movies end in a more conventional way with the heroes winning, and like what you kind of expect from an action movie. The good guys are going to win, the bad guys are going to be defeated, like the basics of how this stuff works. It was interesting to me that because of the way they designed this story, they're actually allowed to end this movie on a down note of like, oh my god, we just failed like really hard. See you later.
Yeah, it's classic. It's classic screenwriting structure when you think of them as one story, because the midpoint of a story is either a false victory or a false defeat, right? Because it can't be one or the other. Because if it's a victory, then the story's over, and it's a defeat, the story's over. So it's got to be a false version, and then things change and you reevaluate. And so basically this is the midpoint of the story, so they can have it, like you said, end on a defeat. It's sort of a false defeat because they will eventually win by the end, but it feels like a defeat for this one, and it's such a defeat. And you spent all this time with these characters you love, and you just saw most of them, turn to dust. And I don't know if you guys caught it, but the only Avengers at the end who don't vanish are basically the ones from Avengers 1. So that team is sort of left but at the end, kind of how they started by the end of the movie, which is another really cool touch. And that's the other thing too, like right before Thanos does a snap, he reverses not only does it reverse time with the time stone, but then he just mangles Vision. I mean, Vision just had this long sad goodbye with Wanda. You can do it, Wanda. Only you can do it. We're really emotional about it. And Thanos just like, wah, 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 rewind time, smash your head in, kill you like you're trash, and then take the stone. And then you're like, wow, what are we gonna do? Oh God, he's got all the stones now. What are we gonna like? How is this gonna not end horribly? And then our favorite Asgardian shows up from the sky like a Valkyrie, and he's got Stormbreaker, and he's this like fully actualized or realized version of Thor himself, the most power we've ever seen him have in any of these movies, with the biggest motivation to wield that power. And he throws fucking Stormbreaker, and then like Thanos like shoots a beam of all fucking 6 Infinity Stones at that thing, and it cuts right through them. Like you're just like, oh my God, what is happening? I've never seen this before. And then like it hits, and you're like, oh man, they did. Oh, finally they did it. Finally, here it is. And then he's like, you should have went for the head. Snap. And it's just like one of those moments where you're just like your heart drops. You're like, I can't believe they lost. Like how, but Thor, but Stormbreaker, but the Avengers, but like I just
he just spent like in the entire movie trying to get Stormbreaker made. And then it just good job, but
but your aim was 0.2 degrees off in that trajectory, and that's why 50% of life in the universe is gone. And that's what you see in Endgame, right? Thor living again, like not afraid of the messiness of reality and like drama in life, like him having to deal with the consequences of that failure. A character who has spent 2,000 years being the most well-known hero next to his father Odin, and so that the ability of these writers to like have these type of characters to play with is really unique, right? Because in a normal story, a character is not 2,000 years old, a 2,000-year-old alien, right? Who's been worshipped as a god on Earth for thousands of years. They just get a lot. They have a lot to play with. But okay, so what did you guys think? I know we run out of time. What did you guys think of when you actually saw Thanos' snap, and what was going through your heads as you saw, really what that even looked like, what was happening, how it happened, who it happened to, those moments of the defeat? I agree. I mean, I felt as well. I mean, what do you say about?
That's a tough one. I think. I mean, it was pretty shocking. I guess I was kind of surprised by how many characters they did take out. Although, like you said, it was the Avengers 1 characters. There's a little bit of a season 1 sort of privilege or something that happens. They get like special plot armor. I feel like by those numbers that shouldn't have happened, but whatever. It's fine. I was still, it was kind of shocking. A lot of characters that I would have assumed would automatically be safe were not. And so, it was kind of strange. I didn't, I didn't really know what to think about it. It was interesting how it was portrayed. It wasn't like suffering. It was just sort of like turning to dust or something. It was a very peaceful process, I just think it was an interesting way to portray that concept. It was it was well done. And when they the thing at the end when they cut to Samuel Jackson, and then he starts disappearing. I was like, what? Man, you too? Like, really? Come on, you're a star. Like, what?
Yeah, if
can't
there's
disappear.
like one character who does it, I mean Nick Fury, the super spy, he's got a plan for every plan, and he did have a plan for this, and it worked out by the end. But
Right.
calling Captain Marvel,
He sent that message.
yeah. But yeah, it was such a surprise because watching the movie, because you just came after seeing all these characters get dusted, and then you cut to this, and you think, and you don't know where we are in the dusting process when the scene first starts, and then you see like, oh,
Right.
okay, it's happening now. It's finally hitting here. Oh crap! And then he starts going. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's interesting to see they weren't suffering like physically, but there's this existential mental anguish because they see it happening slowly,
Seeing themselves like disappearing,
and like and Peter Parker had a little bit, he had a little bit of plot armor or whatever that kept him alive a little bit longer than most people, so he could like have a sadder goodbye with
have
Tony.
a moment. Yeah.
Like, I don't feel so good, kind of thing. But
right.
But and then another thing that's great about the whole these two movies, but how Doctor Strange plays into the whole thing with using the time stone before the fight with Thanos to like see 14 million and 5 like different futures and see what what they did and what worked and didn't work. And there was only one time they ever won, and let's hope this is it. And that's another thing I love, where he says we're in the end game now, and then that ended up being the title of that ended up being the title of that movie. But yeah, when he this, so it's like, it's not this thing of like, well, if all the characters are together, they're strong enough together to defeat anybody. It's like, no, they're not.
Yeah, right.
Thanos has an advantage, and he's got the stones, and it's 14 million to 1 that they can do this right. And like Doctor Strange can't even say like, are we in the good one? Are we doing it right? Like, you just have to, and after seeing Endgame and stuff and seeing them win, you realize in hindsight that Strange knew he was going to get dusted, right? Part of them winning meant him and all these other people actually getting dusted for 5. So that was the thing. So it wasn't like, oh, I saw 14 million futures and here's the one where we're able to prevent the snap at all or stop Thanos completely. It's like, no. This is just the one where we come out the best 5 years after we lost, so that's like a different calculus.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of a things are going exactly according to plan kind of vibe in the second movie, or in the final movie, where you're sort of like, okay, wait, so all these things had to be just so, like, especially like the Ant-Man stuff and like this time machine van and
it was the one timeline where the rat in the garage ran across the right keys in the van to restart the machine to get Ant-Man out of the quantum realm, which is the whole thing, of course. You guys missed from that movie, but long story short, Ant-Man got stuck in the quantum realm, as he explains. You guys would probably like those movies too. Those are very more on the humorous, family friendly side as well. They're really pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to see, and I watching these, I definitely have a sense of ones that I'd like to watch. How they get you.
Yeah.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I guess if we can move, well, whatever. I'm just gonna say it. Yeah, there was this line from Endgame where Doctor Strange, where Tony Stark says, "You said 1 out of 14 million, we win. Yeah, tell me this is it." And Doctor Strange says, "If I tell you what happens, it won't happen." I was like, "Fuck you!" I hate that stuff.
Yeah,
it's like no. Nice try. You know, motherfucker.
Well, but
I mean, come on. But the words are gonna make it not happen. Come on.
But isn't that? But no. Let me defend that a bit, because wouldn't it be? It should be true that the one he would know if the one that they win is the one in which he tells Tony what he wants to know.
Oh, what a loophole. I know I didn't tell you because I see that I didn't tell you. So
yeah, so I can't tell you because this might be the one where I didn't tell you, and if I tell you, we won't be in that one. So I feel like it is a little loophole to that trope because it's like he could know that literally if he says it, it makes it a different timeline, which is not the one where they win. You know, because he would have seen futures where he told him that. It
just felt like a little bit of a cop-out to me. What can I say?
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, really, just saying a few words changes the entire timeline? Like, I don't know.
But it does. That's how timelines work.
I don't know. They don't, I mean, because like all the stuff that it really depends on, it just doesn't seem to me like telling Tony Stark a few words. I don't know.
Well, we don't know. That's the thing. We don't know what it depends on, right? There's no list.
Exactly, but that's why it feels like kind of a cheat, like basically like sweeping under the rug. Like we don't want to be too specific about the details here. Just like trust me that this is the right thing, and I will not explain myself.
Yeah, look, guys, I mean, we all know that time travel is exactly what you need it to be.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. There's obviously a contrivance that they don't want to lessen the tension of the outcome by saying, "Yeah, we're gonna win. Don't worry." So there's obviously
that's the double bind, I think, with these time travel stories. You know, it's tricky because it's like there's a predetermined future that they're gonna end up at, and yet they don't want it to feel that way. So. It's I don't know. It's really awkward. Anytime, all time travel stories have that, so I don't really hold it against them. But like, it's hard not to find yourself in a situation like that. You know,
because if you think about it, the timeline where they win would have also been a timeline that he saw a future of, right? Like him seeing the future of it would also affect that events in that timeline too. Yeah. Right, so it's got this. Yeah, it's got the timeline, the time travel, issues.
The timey-wimey problem.
Yeah. So we're like verging on talking about Endgame. I just want to close the door on Infinity War. Like Endgame touched on some things that were like super interesting. I want to talk about that in a second. I think Infinity War held up for me overall a little more. I think I probably enjoyed it a little more. So I would probably give it, a solid, A- or B+ or something like that. I think in a way I enjoyed it a little less than Ultron for certain specific reasons, but I think it was just as good in most ways as that movie. And I think in a way it was, it was just more diffuse. It was more like a TV show where you had like group over here, group over there. We're doing this thing, they're doing that, and you're cutting back and forth.
It's like a season finale of like a big TV show.
Yeah, exactly. So I liked that, but it was just a little less I don't know, unified or something. So it felt less complete, I guess, than number 2. So that's the only reason because it's obviously not complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no way, but I did enjoy it a lot for what it did. None of the stuff that really bothers me. Well, I shouldn't say none, but most of the stuff that bothers me about this plotline is in Endgame, not in Infinity War.
Okay.
Infinity War like mostly worked for me. I mean, the time stone moment was just like it's annoying to me in a way, but it's also like, well, I mean, that's just the logic of how that works. So what are you gonna do if you're gonna give someone? But it just makes me want more. And I guess like to roll it over into Endgame. Let me say like my one thing, like the main thing that I want to say about Endgame, which is that for me. The most exciting moment in the entire movie was when they're time traveling, and I actually didn't like the way they did it, but I liked the idea that they did it anyway. That Thanos in the past discovers that they're time traveling, and that he got the Infinity Stones in the future, right? So he finds out, right? So he knew, right? To me, that was the peak of excitement in that story. I was like, holy shit, this is cool. And here's what I wanted. And as you say, criticism is some unmet expectation or something. It's absolutely what this is. When that happened, I thought the stage was set for this crazy Primer-esque time travel battle where we had so Thanos is like, okay, well, I got to time travel to stop them, and then there's 10 Thanoses and 18 Iron Mans, and they're doing stuff trying to stop the other one, and this thing didn't work, you know what I mean? It should have, I was expecting this this complicated time travel battle to ensue, but it really just turned into one big attack, and I was a little disappointed with the follow-up. But I loved the idea that he found out. I will say that what I didn't like is the way he found out, which was that the nebula from that time period connected to the time traveling one.
You just forgot that her Wi-Fi was on. And
yeah, is that what happened? I was just that doesn't what? I don't know. That made no sense to me that would happen. I was just what?
Yeah, that one's a little weird. I agree with that. I think what I like about it, back to the messy theme, is that they're fighting a Thanos from the past who doesn't even know them because he hasn't fought them yet, so it's super weird, right, that their big showdown isn't against the Thanos that defeated them before, because they killed him earlier. know. So that's what I like about it. It's an interesting way to get the villain to have a different perspective by the time you get to the final fight. The Nebula thing is it's kind of I approve of what they got out of it. I don't care, but how they got there is a little hinky,
Yeah. I wish he could have found out some better way than that, I don't know. That just felt like a quick way to get it done, but I don't know. I love the idea that he finds out. I just anyway, I what they did with it didn't quite work for me. The other thing I really did like about Endgame that was reminiscent of no. I'll start with the first part, which is they go and they kill Thanos, right? Yeah. So the movie starts and they're like, oh look, we found Thanos, and they kill him, and it's okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was just
what's the movie now?
He's just hanging out on a planet by himself. It was so weird. He exiled himself, in this strange way.
Well, that's what he said. He just wanted to retire.
Yeah, I kind of like that, and I like how it's such a quiet, there's no fight really. They just show up and kill him, and that's it. That was the end of Thanos. I don't know. There's something anticlimactic about it that was very appealing to me. Because I really didn't expect that, and then they're 5 years later, and I'm what?
Dude, in the theater, my jaw eyes. You did not 5 years later me right now.
I know, it blew my mind because it was already weird as fuck, and then I'm 5 years later, what? So this part of the story reminded me of New Caprica, Battlestar Galactica. It reminded me of, obviously the 3 years from Lost, when the Oceanic Six and Dharma and all that, they're even you come back and it's Scarlett Johansson, it's Black Widow, keeping an eye out, keeping watch, trying to hold it together, sort of doing the thing like Sawyer and Jin and Juliet, they were we're gonna search.
Yeah, leaving the candle burning, waiting for
exactly. Yeah, hoping for contact. I think I love that stuff. That was great. When they started with that, I was okay, you know what? They're really confounding my expectations for how this story is supposed to go, and so I that was super. That was great. And then when it turns into a time travel story. And it's season 5 of Lost, basically, where they're traveling through previous stuff from Avengers and I guess from other Marvel movies as well. It was fun. To me, that was great. I love that part. Where they're just interloping in these other time periods. I think the thing I didn't like about the movie was like where it ends up. Basically, like it just felt like it's just kind of a big battle. Like I was fine with the build up, and I was fine with what happens after, and even the end point, the Iron Man moment. Like the emotions are strong. I can't complain about that, but it was just like a big battle, and it was just like a lot of characters on screen, like throwing shit at each other and jumping around. It's
That's the best part. That's why
I don't know. That's just not, that stuff is not for me. I mean, that's the main reason why I was staying away from these movies, because like I can't, I don't mind action. Like I can watch it and it can be fun, but to me it was just like way too chaotic for me to enjoy, because it was just like so much shit going on screen at the same time. I couldn't even really focus on anything.
Enough, right? It wasn't enough.
What the listeners may not know that Justin's 85.
It was too loud.
I do like old-fashioned like style in terms of movies. So, if you're used to this kind of thing, maybe it seems weird to you that I'm like put off by that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I like action movies where it's a little more simplified, like what's happening, so I can really like follow everything happening on screen and who's doing what and why. And like,
you're supposed to rewatch it, focusing on different things.
It was not like that. Yeah. So on a first watch, I only watched it once. I was not. It was just like, it was basically just like we got a lot of visual effects studios together, and they did a lot of work.
Dude, the whole thing. I mean, the big battle is so good. I mean, in general, but like the drama that sets it up with Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. Like, okay, Thanos is down there. He's just waiting for us. What the fuck? Again, like subverting expectations about how this is gonna go out, and they're all pissed. I mean, they're all just like, we gotta get this guy. I mean, like, come on. And then they go and they fight him, and like he's still beating them, right?
Yeah.
And because, by the way, like as you guys could probably intuit it, like his armor and his weapons are, made from alien materials that's as good and as anything they've got. That's why, like, he's hacking through a vibranium shield, which is like the strongest shit on earth. Because it's like he's got stuff stronger than that, right? That's why like his armor is like impenetrable. And also another thing about him as a character, his skin is impenetrable. Now, I know there was a thing where he got cut, a little blood, but like that's supposed to be his thing. Is he's maybe impenetrable is not how they want to describe it. It's just very, very hard to penetrate. So it's almost like he's got his skin as his own armor. So he's just like this super resilient, durable beast, right? And this the whole thing with like, leading up to the big fight, and Captain America's sitting, Thor's got knocked out and Iron Man's done, and then all of a sudden you hear on your left. Now that's a callback to Captain America, Winter Soldier, where Captain America he meets Falcon. So Falcon is the played by Anthony Mackie.
Right. Yeah, we did figure out who Falcon was because there's the new show, and it was like, that's that character.
That character. And so basically, they become friends in that movie, and there's a whole joke about Steve, being super strong and fast, outpacing him when they're running track, and so Steve would run past Falcon, who's just a normal human, and Steve would go on your left, I'm passing you. And so it became like he was sort of ribbing him.
Okay.
And so that's why in Endgame, when the portal opens, Sorcerer portal opens and Falcon comes out, he's like, on your left. Like, that's a huge callback.
Okay. Yeah, see, so like some of the stuff, it was clear, more so in Endgame than any of the other ones. It was clear that we had missed a few things by not watching the other.
By that point, the more movies you like, as you get towards Endgame, you're missing more movies.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, like the Black Panther stuff definitely helped. Like that would have been, if we hadn't watched that, that would have been really out of context, just like a lot of this other stuff was. I felt like I mostly followed it, but a moment like that just doesn't work if you haven't seen that thing. So you don't know what they're referencing. Like I got the sort of idea of it
you knew it was
emotionally.
meaningful, but didn't know. Yeah. And that's the thing.
Exactly.
Like, and you know, one of my favorite things in all of is entertainment and storytelling is when, and Justin knows this, I've said it a million times.
Indeed, I do.
When characters from like different walks of life all get together for a common good and fight the big bad guy. I am just a baby about that stuff. It's why I like the movie Hackers. It's why I like Independence Day. I mean, those big climactic moments when it's like, okay, it doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, or where you come from. There's a higher purpose here that we all have to like play our part for. And so, yeah, on your left being the beginning to this big battle. And then you see all these portals open up from all the different sorcerers, opening portals from all over the planets and some other planets too. And just this huge, like every character you've ever wanted to see, you know, or cared about in the MCU shows up. And like, it's really porn. It's like comic book porn. You know, it's so gratuitous. And then, so Justin, you're complaining about like, you know, the smorgasbord that like people had been spent 10 years wanting to see like the craziest battles ever and these characters doing the like coolest stuff ever. And but what's great is like they still have the emotion behind why they're doing this stuff, so it's not just kind of like empty.
Yeah, and that stuff all worked for me. You know, I definitely felt like the character moments and the, you know, the sacrifices and all that, like that was strong. Like so like that, it was just the actual fighting part, you know, like that's the only part where it was just like, oh my god, it's like sensory overload. Like I don't know, it was hard to process.
I get what you're saying, because with scenes like that, I sort of gloss over a little bit, because it's like you're kind of like waiting for the beat that is going to determine where it's going. So I mean, I get what you're saying. I think for me, what was really striking about that battle is that it had gotten to such a dire situation that even in the context of the story they were telling with the characters that they had, they ended up with not one but two above and beyond Deus Ex Machina. Like we get the portals, the sorcerer portals, and then we get Captain Marvel.
Yes.
You know, like because as you said, like Thor's out, Tony's out, like all these. You know, it is really dire again. It's like yet again we're in this totally dire situation where Thanos.
And how are we gonna?
Right. But then I do like the you know, the glove thing reminded me a little bit of in Harry Potter, like the hand that Voldemort makes for Wormtail and then makes him strangle himself. Where it's like, you know, it's never gonna be, you know, Thanos takes this glove that Tony made with his like Iron Man, like all his suits like have personalities and they like respond to his commands, you know. And so like I was not thinking about that until the Infinity Stones switched hands, but it's like, yeah, that glove is like never gonna work for you.
Yeah. Oh god, that's in that kind of sentiment, like, you know, another thing I love and always talk about is when a character, when someone underestimates a character at their own peril, right? And you're just like, how did you think you were gonna use Tony Stark's technology against him? Like, how dare you, Dane? You know, like it's just it's unthinkable. Now, of course, they could have written it that way and it would have been fine. But the way they wrote it, it's like it's like, of course Tony has the upper hand here. He's fucking Tony Stark. I am Iron Man, you know, like that's who I am, you know, and that's why you lose, you know, and that's why I love that moment, because it's the apotheosis of like the entire character's ethos, you know, what it means to be him, like summed up in like a couple seconds of like action, you know, and it completely, you know, negating the large sense of inevitability and hubris that Thanos had about what his success was going to be, especially considering he knew he had succeeded in the future or in the past or whatever, right? So he was already arrogant about he could wipe out these humans and they not be a threat, right? Before he even did the stuff in Infinity War, and then he knows he won, right? So then he's like, you got the stones, I can take those from you again, and then make a snap, and it's like, no, you can't. Raw, this is the end game. This is the one time of the 14 million where you lose. And then the whole thing with Tony's funeral, I thought was just so well done, of like laying this character to rest after all these years. Of course, like the sort of meta quality of knowing that like Robert Downey Jr. was the face of this franchise for so long. If those first Iron Man movies were not well received, there would be no MCU. So much, not only the formation of the Avengers and the movies is Iron Man responsible for, right? I love that line in the first one where he's like, I'm not in charge, I just pay for everything and make everyone look cool. Like, but like he's such an important character in the world, and he's such an important character sort of outside the world in terms of these being movies and commodities and stuff. And so having him have that huge impact in Endgame, and then laying his character to rest, and then the whole funeral scene where you see like all these characters that, has been in his life over the years, in order. I love that too. It's like, depending on where you were standing, that's how much he kind of cared about you. Don't take offense. But then again, like them just being willing to do the hard stuff, right? And not have these rosy endings and these like, oh, don't worry, Iron Man, he'll just, click a button and his nano suit will fix him and he'll be fine, and he'll live to fight another day. It's like, no, like these are, in some ways, modern tragedies, because some of these outcomes are, not good for everybody. Okay, do we have time to talk about WandaVision?
Yeah, I think so, but there's two more things I want to say before we do that. So this is a quick question that I think you'll know the answer to.
Potatoes.
Oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. When Tony Stark is in the Iron Man suit, like my basic question is, like, in a lot of these movies they show his face, like in the helmet. They'll cut to him in there, and you'll see like a little like sort of display he's looking at, and he'll like talk to his latest AI. I don't know, it changes. Anyway, did they do that in the first movie?
Yeah.
They did. Okay. Because my problem with Iron Man was always that like he's so faceless, like I can't connect to the character because like it's just this robot face,
Yeah, so he can't actually emote. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that really helped a lot with that you could actually see him during the battles. I don't know. I think that was like essential. I didn't remember that they did that in the first movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
In the first movie, he doesn't have his sort of normal Iron Man suit for a long time, because the first movie is about him making his first suit, which was sort of like doesn't have that type of technology. It's literally he built it while he was stuck in a cave. So it's like it's basically like literally a suit of armor, like a knight suit of armor that is like mechanical. So there's nothing like super high tech in it. And then later by the end, he creates the Mark I, I guess it's called. But yeah, so he's constantly developing suits, and for different uses. So, they're all called like Mark some number, right? And so Mark 45 might be the one that's built for going underwater, or one might be built for autonomous use, one might be built for, so he's always making different suits. As you see during the movies, he's always got a new suit. And he's always he has different AI programs that he can run, use to kind of run them, especially usually as Jarvis, but then once Jarvis gets integrated into Ultron, then of course he's got to go use his other AI programs to run his suits and his stuff.
Right.
So potatoes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So the second thing I wanted to say, just about Endgame, is that I appreciate So I felt like it was slightly a cop out to like say like we won't erase the past, or yeah, we won't erase the past, but we will bring the people back who disappeared. But it is also a messy thing, which I like, as you mentioned. I do wish that, they didn't have time for this. So there's no reason they would do this. And I guess WandaVision does touch on this, but I do wish that there was more. I kind of want some basic stories from the world where there's half the population that disappeared for 5 years. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a global event, the likes of which I don't know that we've ever seen.
Yeah, society would be
And
crumbled.
so, yeah, like infrastructure. I mean, there's so many things that should complicate, and it just doesn't come across in any of this. Like it's down to like these very small personal details that you just don't really get this sense overall. So anyway, I think it's an interesting idea, and maybe they will develop it at some point in some show or movie to come. But anyway, yeah, I like the idea, but it also feels like they're sort of having it always. We get all the things we want. We don't have to say
version.
stuff didn't happen, but we also like
don't have to show don't have to detail all the issues.
Yeah, we bring the people back. I don't know, like to me there's like something there that just makes me want more. And so anyway, yeah, that's
leftovers then.
But yeah, I know. Yeah, well, the leftovers didn't quite do it for me either. But it did focus on that for a much smaller portion of the population. So yeah, I don't know. To me, there's a story there. Maybe it doesn't fit in the MCU because it just doesn't it doesn't agree with their sort of ethos of like what they want to focus on. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, we could talk about the sacrifices are great. The funeral stuff, the Captain America ending. Captain America really grew on me over the course of the series, as did many of the characters. And yeah, I loved all that stuff. The ending after the big battle, I liked all that. Was good. I have no complaints about that.
Yeah, it was super. I mean, obviously, super surprising for when I mean, God. Chris Evans, Captain America.
It's like he's just sitting over there. Like it's weird. Yeah. Like he just showed up. Like it's like that time travel thing of like, if I time travel, then I'll come here now. And you want yourself to appear at the door. It's like this weird thing where like he knew where they would be, and so he just showed up. Like
he just was hanging out that whole time, and he had it on his calendar for all those years.
Yeah. So it's just like interesting that it like feels instant, but it was actually like however many years, until then. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that was good.
I also liked that they said that they tried and failed to bring back Romanoff. That they said they wouldn't be able to. And I just think it's great when a show or a movie will actually let a main character die and stay dead.
Yeah, it made her sacrifice mean something.
Yeah, because if they just undid it, then it's like, well, they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's what saved it for me. That actually some characters did die, even though it wasn't from the disappearance. Like, so it did feel like they weren't getting a win on everything.
An interesting tidbit, if you guys go back and watch Captain America, the first movie, the main villain in that movie is actually the entity that we see at is it Vormir? Is that the planet?
Oh yeah,
that sounds right.
Yeah. Really so you don't know that, but basically the villain gets defeated. He's a normal sort of normal human person. He gets defeated in the first movie, and then we just don't know what happened to him. Something happens and we're like, oh, okay, we don't know what happened to him. And so in Infinity War, when they first go to Vormir and we see him come out of the shadows and cloak, that's a huge thing.
And that's funny because I thought the way they played that scene,
could tell
it was supposed to be a reveal.
But it was just like, I don't know who that is, so okay.
Yeah, it's it's a super surprise. There was no one thinking, oh, I know what happened to Red Skull. He's over here guarding the Soul Stone. No, like it's not a thing anybody knew. So it was a huge deal to just see like, oh, this is what happened. This was his punishment for fucking with the Tesseract. Okay, interesting. But yeah, I love Natasha's sacrifice and how that, her and Hawkeye competing to die for the team.
Yeah,
that was a good scene.
And it's because it's like, well, who's the better fighter? Because that's who's going to win this. And and it's one of the things Marvel does really well is, and this is like a comic book thing, is we want to see our heroes fight each other. We don't want them to be mad at each other, but we want to see just who's the best and how their powers work. So they did that in Avengers 1, where Thor is fighting Hulk and Iron Man. Like they come up with these reasons for them to fight each other. And Captain America Civil War is the best example of that, where literally the Avengers team gets split on two sides and they have to they get split from a philosophical difference that turns physical. And they end up fighting each other, and you get to go, okay, well, this is what it looks like for these people to fight each other. So it was a huge, so that was a cool thing to kind of see. And like Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, is one of my favorite characters in the whole thing. She's in a way like the best fighter, not for her weight class. One of my favorite things is an Infinity War. Like if you just watch her in her
she's
movies,
just a human, but
she's just a human, but she's sort of more deadly than anybody else relatively, because like in the beginning of Captain America Civil War, they go to an event, they're fighting the people. Literally, like Captain America's there, Wanda's there, they all take Falcon is there, and they all take out like 1, 2, 3, 4 bad guys each in this like montage. Natasha comes on the scene for her part. I always like to count it. It's like 11 bad guys she takes out, like in the same amount of like she's just on a fucking another level. And I love that they consistently show that about her. And like one of my favorite things where they show that is in Infinity War, was that great sequence where like Scarlet Witch, Wanda and Vision have been trying to like live and have their little romance apart from the world, but they realize they got to go back to the world and they can't live in this fantasy forever. Hint, hint for WandaVision.
Right.
And then so the children of Thanos attack, and they get the jump on them, and so they're barely able to like keep up in the fighting, right? And then just when you think, oh no, we're gonna get we're not going to really be able to win this fight because Vision is hurt and Wanda's, trying to protect him and fight too. And then the train goes by and everybody stops. It's like a Western moment, right? It's like, da 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 da, like the whole Western thing. You can just hear it playing. And then like, who's the man in the shadow? It's Captain America, right? He shows up, Falcon shows up, and they all like start fighting. And as soon as Black Widow shows up, she has never fought. I forgot the guy's name. I forgot the children of Thanos she was fighting, but the guy with the spear. And she has never fought these people before, never seen them before, and she gets a fatal blow in 2 hits. In 2 moves. She gets a fatal blow against a fighter who's stronger and faster than she is. And like that's the thing about I feel like it's like she's underrated as a fighter. If she had Captain America's super soldier serum, she would be better than him. Now the thing about him is like the thing about the super soldier serum is it like, and the reason he's so unique is it amplifies what's inside of you, and he's got this innate goodness. So it's one of those things where it's like the more he's fighting for something good, the sort of stronger he becomes and more he can sort of do in a way. So his power levels it feels like it kind of grow based on the challenge. And so, versus like a normal person who just has like a maximum output of energy or power, whatever. And so, but anyway, I love everything about what they've done with her character. The dichotomy between being an assassin and being used and being brainwashed.
Yeah, there was some interesting hints about her backstory in Ultron when she got that vision of like the ballet school that I guess wasn't a ballet school. I don't know. I got a little confused.
It was an assassin school. Yeah.
It was an assassin school that was fronted. I don't know. To me, like it was like the Americans almost meets the comic book world.
She took an elective. She took ballet as an elective at assassin. Hey, it was a that or needlepoint, and she's like, But yeah, no, she's got a really interesting backstory. Again, super messy, and she tries over the course of the movies. She tries to be more than the killer that she was taught to be. It's a similar thing with Winter Soldier, right? He's guilty. He feels the guilt that someone used his body, brainwashed his mind, and used his body as a weapon that he had no control of. Hydra did that basically, and used him as a killer for decades, as an assassin. So that's why when you see, Black Widow lead, in game being kind of in charge, that's part of her character arc, going from like the lone assassin outsider to finally kind of joining a team that feels like a family, to like now being the matriarch almost of like what's left of all that stuff, and like trying to hold it all together. Yeah, you guys should really just watch all the other movies. I mean, there's only a couple that I don't think are that great. The rest, I think you've seen all the characters at some point by now. So you already go into it, having a sense of what they do and who they are and their sort of like character type and stuff like that. I was gonna say, since we've been podcasting for a while, maybe we can do a WandaVision podcast another time so we don't shortchange WandaVision.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think that sounds
that makes
good.
sense.
Yeah, because I think
it is an abrupt kind of shift. There is a lot.
It's totally separate and yet connected. I don't know. It's weird. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So overall, just about the 4 Avengers movies, you guys are happy you saw them? You're
yeah. I was very surprised how much they grew on me over the course of watching them, in terms of the characters and in terms of the storylines. So I was expecting to find them mediocre to okay, but they were better than that. I have to admit, I don't know. I have problems with certain aspects of them, but they exceeded my expectations by far, so I can't complain. Nice. I would definitely recommend them in general. Especially 2, 3, and 4.
But here's the thing: you're gonna go back and watch 1, and you're gonna like it.
I'd probably enjoy it more now. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I was just missing context. Yeah.
I think it would be interesting now to watch the movies in their order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a whole world, and if you're like obsessed with details and like connections between things, like I am.
I don't know anyone like that.
I think there's a lot to enjoy about
great.
it.
If you like serialized storytelling, you like character development, there's so much out there with these characters, and you get to see them, develop bit by bit over time. And it's nice that most of the movies are entertaining above and beyond that. But yeah, I would definitely
very long.
They are pretty long. The earlier ones and the standalone movies won't obviously be as long. But I would say, watch them in the order they were released, I guess. I mean, you can also watch them in like a chronological order.
Which there's some weird timeline stuff apparently, because there's going to be a Black Widow movie and her character's dead. So I guess it's going to be like a flashback. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, no. I mean, as I said, sort of in the beginning, I just love that even when I don't really know what they're referencing, I just think it adds so much depth and texture to have this massive kind of set of mythologies that they're drawing from. Filling in some of those blanks. I was very pleasantly surprised with all of them and increasing.
Increasing. Yeah, I think like for Endgame, like I'm kind of tempted to. It's weird because like to me it has the most interesting plot, but also the most disappointing plot. So it's like I feel ambivalent about that. I love the character stuff though, so I can't complain about that. So it's sort of like it's like balanced out by like things. So it's hard for me to sum it up, because like I really like certain aspects. Certain aspects I find disappointing or clunky, and then like it's So I struggle to come up with a single. It's like I feel like the plot is like a mixture of A+ and C-, and and the character stuff is like solid A-. So I don't know. I don't know what that adds up to.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy it. It was a satisfying, ending to the thing. It felt like it followed from Infinity War. It delivered a lot of surprises. It was probably a little much if you're out of context with some of these characters that are from the other movies. So if you're thinking about watching these, I actually think it might be worth it to watch some of the other.
If you haven't seen them yet, spoiler
alert. Yeah, I know. It's gonna be weird listening to this if you haven't seen the movies. So maybe it's weird for me to even say anything like this, but I would just say if you know anyone who's thinking about it, I would just say it's probably not a bad idea to like dive in a little more seriously to sort of get the full appreciation. Because I think it is like followable, but the extra like hit of fun that you get from knowing the things they're talking about like does make a difference.
Yeah, it really, really, really does. I mean, and that's why they keep doing it, because you get those hits of like, oh, I remember that from that movie, or oh, I remember when they talked about this thing, or this is a callback from that, or wow, back to Cap wielding the hammer, right? Of like that goes back to Age of Ultron, that whole thing and the whole concept that like when Thor's like, I knew it, like I knew he could have lifted it, it's like you weren't like yelling about that this whole time. What do you mean you knew it?
Right.
It's like he was going to everybody, hey, by the way, I know he can, but just that detail of like, oh, okay, he knew what was up back then.
Oh, I love Fat Thor. I feel like I got to say something about Fat Thor because that's like a Battlestar Galactica thing, like with Fat Lee, and I just thought like it was a hilarious and strangely affecting thing that they did to have Thor like drowning his sorrows and doing Big Lebowski references. Like that was so weird. I can't talk about that without mentioning that was great.
I love that his mom sees him and immediately knows that he's traveling through time.
I think it's so she's part of it is she's a witch, so she's got some specialness, but I think but it's really the mom thing. It's like I can tell you're not the normal Thor. You're not my normal guy.
Right.
Look at you. Like, there's no and we've seen scenes like that, those time travel scenes like that before. And they did that in this movie, right? Where it's like, okay, they run into somebody and blah, blah, blah. You have to pretend you're somebody else, that you're not time traveling. But the cut through the chase. And he's also like needing his mommy. I mean, that's part of what he was so upset about back to Infinity War is he had systematically lost his mom and his dad. And then, his sister, he had to kill his sister. That's Thor 3. Spoiler alert. I
think they referenced that at some point.
And so getting so anyway, having that be that brief moment where he gets to like confide in his mom, and like let go of like pretending he's fine for just a second was really, I think, pretty nice. It's cool. I agree. Fat Thor was super. I mean, when you guys go back and watch the original Thor movie, you're barely gonna recognize him. I mean, he's kind of what you see in Avengers 1, but like even by Avengers 1, he's more I don't want to say humanized, but he's less of like the classic Thor arrogant, stick up his butt, I am the greatest of everything guy, because that's really part of his character arc is him getting beat down completely to a pulp. Because even in the beginning of Infinity War, right? I mean, that's what's so great about the beginning, that part of that movie is like they're on the Asgardian ship. Thanos is attacked. Thor is captive, and Loki's there, and Thanos is trying to get the Tesseract, and he's like, "You're gonna lose because we've got a Hulk," and you're like, "Oh shit, Hulk is here! You got Hulk and Thor, bitch! Y'all going down! Like, there's no way Thanos can defeat the Hulk." And then you see him start fighting, and then like Dumas, whatever the fucking dude's name is, like, let Thanos have his fun, let him fight the Hulk by himself, And Thanos was not breaking a sweat, pummeling Thor to the ground, and you're like, oh shit, this is a different kind of villain. This is not normal. Our heroes don't lose this way. Not Thor and the Hulk, the two strongest Avengers. Like, what are we in for here? You know? So yeah, so that whole part of like Thor's journey into darkness, like that's that powerful defeat, right? I mean, it was so well done, and like, you know, they really just do a good job of thinking through like what would people do in these situations, how would they react to a cataclysmic loss like that, you know, and what do you do in those types of situations. So yeah, Fat Thor, I mean, all the comedy they got out, you know, was really good, and even the whole time, yeah. And one of the things I really liked, and I think audiences liked, is even by the end of the movie, when he, you know, gets back to being normal Thor, and he gets his lightning and stuff back, and he's, you know, fighting is normal. He didn't just lose the gut.
He didn't get back in shape. He never did. I was so amazed because, like, on Battlestar Galactica, there's like one scene where Lee's working out and he's like normal. It's like, what?
Yeah, they couldn't afford the fat suit.
Like,
it's like you would have expected when there's, you know, when he and Tony and Cap are like on the hill staring down at Thanos before the big fight, and Thor, which is another little great moment when he sticks both of his hands out, and Stormbreaker and Mjolnir like fly to his hand. Anyway, and he gets charged up with lightning, and then his like suit forms, you know, from the lightning, and it's like that's the moment where the fat would get melted off and his six pack would come back, and you go, oh, okay, he's back to. But I thought, I mean, there were some PC issues with him being Fat Thor and getting comedy out of him being overweight, that I understand. But one of the things I thought was well done, on the other hand, was that they didn't say he's better when he's not fat, right? Now, they did say his poor health was in response to trauma and is not taking care of himself, things like that. But they're not saying, oh, okay, once he's over that, that means he won't be fat anymore, because being fat's bad. And so he'll only be good Thor once he's not fat anymore. And so they didn't do that, which I thought was a smart move.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I mean, I'm generally not a fan of fat jokes, but I thought that
to me, it wasn't really so much that he was fat per se as like where his character was.
It was that he was the diametrically opposed to the concept of Thor, right?
Exactly.
I think that's funny. It's not that he's fat. He's the opposite
of
a
loafer.
It's also the drinking and the like loafing around,
just, like,
and you know, it's like
with a roommate.
Playing video. It's like that is really like. It contrasts in such a weird way with like who you think Thor is supposed to be. So I think that's why it worked. And it didn't really feel to me like they were trying to like fat shame per se. I don't know, but I guess it's a line you walk when you do a storyline like that.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit like they were poking fun at how over the top ripped he had been in the previous movies. And just the general idea that,
that's what I thought was a great idea, and the fact that he never comes back, and that Hulk scene that you mentioned, I think is the last scene where we get like normal Hulk in the entire Avengers saga. Like that first scene where Thanos beats him up, like he doesn't come out again in that movie. There's a whole thing where he's not coming out. And then he's integrated in Endgame. So there's just like, it's weird. It's weird. Like that. I do think that's, maybe that is underdeveloped. My assumption was that they had developed that in a movie somewhere, but apparently not. So yeah, I think they dropped the ball a little bit on Hulk. I think there was something to do there that they should have filled in.
The only thing you're kind of missing is in Thor 3. You know, so after Hulk leaves the team at the end of Iron Man of Avengers 2, he ends up getting transported to another planet, and he ends up being like trapped on this planet and forced to fight in this like Roman style alien gladiatorium thing, and he spends like a year or something as the Hulk. And so when we see Bruce in Infinity War, like that beginning scene, Like that's I think one of the first time. Well, we see it in Thor 3, but basically, like it's been a very, very long time being Hulk and not being Banner. So I think that's supposed to be kind of the context on what happens after that when the Hulk like doesn't want to come back out anymore. And I think it has something to do with Thanos beating his ass. I can't tell exactly why he doesn't want to come out and
it's
fight.
weird that they don't say. I thought that was strange. I thought that was very strange. It was interesting, but just kind of underdeveloped.
Yeah, it's kind of like it forces Bruce to have to fight, in a way he's not used to fighting before, which is good for him. But I just feel like there's like a scene missing that would have connected all these parts and made it make sense. That way, at the end, when you have Smart Hulk, is I think what they call him, basically Bruce Banner who looks like Hulk.
Yeah.
You would feel like Hulk got what he wanted too. And not just that, like the Banner personality won out and got the best of both worlds.
It just took the
So it's like I don't know what Hulk wanted, so I don't know if did he lose this, or not. But
Well, suffice it to say, we had a lot to say about.
We barely scratched the surface.
I know. I think we didn't even hit all the details here, but there's a lot. I mean, it's a big story, so.
Speaking of Hulk, one of my favorite moments in all the movies, but particularly in Avengers 1, is at the end when, the team is like recouping, trying to figure out how to defeat the Chitauri invasion, and all the huge alien ships are flying around and aliens are everywhere, and they're trying to come up with their game plan. They're like, where's Banner? And Banner shows up on his little moped, like late to the fight. And he's like, oh, okay. We'll talk about this next time. Remind us to talk about this thing that I don't understand, which is Hulk's secret. There's this whole running line about what is Hulk in Avengers 1 about what is your secret, right? How do you not turn into the Hulk? We all know that when Bruce Banner gets angry, he gets involuntarily triggered into being the Hulk. So the question is, how do you hold that back? What do you do to keep your anger down? And the punchline reveal to that question, I think I'm a little too left brain to get this or something, but like, because I don't really understand the logic. But basically, the what he says is, because Tony's like, okay, Bruce, like, you see this huge Leviathan, which is the huge alien worm ship, troop transport ship, flying through the streets, coming at all the Avengers, and Tony's like, okay, yeah, suit up, Bruce, like, time to be the Hulk, like, get angry, do whatever you got to do to like change into the Hulk so we can fight. He goes, that's it, that's my secret, I'm always angry. And then he like turns around in one move, morphs into the Hulk, and then one punches this huge fucking ship, which is one of the best moments of my entire life. Like that, like up into the other Avengers moments in later movies kind of can top that, but like that's one of the moments I was like, I just, how do you? I mean, this is just the best thing ever. One punching this fucking huge shit monster creature thing. You're like, that's the Avengers. But anyway, that was the thing I don't really understand. And it has something to do with how the question was raised, because he's like, the secret to me not getting angry is that I'm always angry. And I just don't understand that as a logic flow. So I don't know if you guys caught that or that stood out.
I did catch that, and I also didn't understand it. So
did you? Our brains are probably similar and not.
Yeah, I think so.
I've talked to other people about this, and they don't have a hang up about it, and so I don't know why. Somehow it makes sense to people, and the creators of the movie, it made sense to them. I don't get it. I don't understand, because I just feel like it has to do with like. And just how the use of the language is like how I think it confuses me when they're like, because he's like, well, what's your secret? Is it Pilates? Is it yoga? Is it what do you do to not be angry? And it's like, well, there is no secret, because I feel like the answer should have been, the secret is there is no secret. I feel like that's the answer, because the question was wrong. The question is, how do you transform into the Hulk? That's the real question. We make this assumption he does it through being angry, and therefore he stops it by not being angry. Therefore, we're going to ask the question, what's your secret to not being angry or to not but that's not really what the question should be, because he's angry all the time. So really there is no secret. Like the secret is he's angry all the time.
Yeah, maybe that's what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, which
kind of
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
when you put it that way. So
go ahead.
Since you mentioned the Hulk, I'm sorry, this is like kind of a nitpicky point, but I can't. Since we're on the topic, I'm gonna have to mention it. Can we just talk about Hulk's pants? Because
how they don't rip off all the time.
Because it's like he wears big pants. Is that what we're supposed to think?
No.
Yeah, but this is
this is suspension of disbelief, and
this is like my complaint about how nearly all the aliens in the Delta Quadrant are humanoid. Like, it's because they're played by human actors, right? So,
you would see Hulk. You would see naked Hulk all the time. I think you're supposed to think he, not that he wears, because obviously he doesn't wear pants that are big enough to fit Hulk, because they wouldn't fit him at all. But I think you're supposed to think like maybe he wears some pants with a little bit of elastic in them, a little bit of lycra,
a little stretchy,
a little stretch. But it is beyond the suspension of disbelief in that way, because like his shirt rips off, everything else rips off his shoes.
Yeah, I was just like, so there's this moment, I forget what movie it was. I think it was the first two, where he falls and he's naked and his pants are there, and I'm like, what? Like, but. What? You were wearing the pants when you were the Hulk.
No, but they got stretched.
And then he lands and he's not wearing the pants. And it's like, what happened? They blew off?
Well,
like, I don't understand.
in that one, when he landed, his pants don't shrink back down. So that's a thing that I don't think happens.
Yeah, that's where I got confused. I was like, wait, but I thought
he has to like change clothes. I think they showed that in like Avengers 2. I think like after he returns, he's like wearing different clothes or something. Like the pants can only expand one way. They don't. Now, what's funny is Tony could probably make him some pants that do that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking they should do. They should have some kind of weird lore about, like, these are like expanding pants that can fit anyone at any time. And so when he grows, the pants grow. And then, I mean, it is kind of ridiculous, but it's just this weird conceit about Hulk that, just the logic of like getting so much bigger so quickly, like it just creates some complicated. I understand why they did. It doesn't really bother me that much, but since you mentioned Hulk, I just had to say it because I did spend some time fretting about the pants.
You sure did. So, I personally can't wait to apply this level of analysis to WandaVision.
And WandaVision has a lot of details, and I think it is worth spending the time. I mean, it's a little less pants-centric than the Avengers.
Yeah,
there's some dresses too.
Yeah, there are significant ones.
Different decades. Well, cool, guys. So this has been fun. I'm happy you guys got to see it and enjoyed it, and we got to talk about it. Yeah. I mean, Marvel is doing something that I think is that most people, obviously, it's successful, but I think most people can kind of get into on some level, whether they like comic book action movies or not. And so I think that's what's fun about it and kind of impressive about what they do. The quality is usually really high, and then it's a wider audience can actually get something out of them. And they can just have different types of stories, and it's not all action. There can be comedy, and there can be a lot of other cool stuff that people can get into. So glad you guys are part of the MCU now. You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
we finally joined this like giant cultural phenomenon that we've just been hiding from. So
once you guys go see all the movies, I am going to recommend you guys when you have time for a new TV show, watch Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I did not like it when it really originally came on, but I went back and watched it recently for the first time and just really, really loved it. I mean, you guys know Agent Coulson, and it's about him leading. It's in the same canon as the movies. So when some of the big events of the movies happen, the show will sort of talk about them, and so you can kind of see where it lines up in the timeline. But it's really well done. So when you're ready for like, it's sort of a crime spy show, like an Alias, but it's like Marvel meets Alias or something.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Fringe, but
yeah.
But cool, guys. All right.
All right.
Until next time. Thanks.
Until next time.
All
Ciao,
right.
ciao, ciao.
See you next time. 1 second.
Oh man.